The defeated demons fell to the ground screaming. The black wings could not hold them. The survivors turned into huge birds and tried to fly away. People saw them off with triumphant glances. The birds soared in the blue sky and rejoiced that they had escaped a terrible fate. They saw how the one who destroyed almost their entire army walked with a sweeping step across the yellow scorched earth. It was Doc Bay, the demon slayer. Although the demons were defeated, he somehow felt a violent, malevolent energy around him. So much so that the back of his head was burning. His companions thanked the winner for everything and said that they would never forget his feat. He turned to them and told them not to talk nonsense. As soon as he defeated the demons, they immediately stared at the back of his head with unkind glances. They replied that they personally had no complaints about the winner, but they will just take his life for Murim's peace of mind, so don't let Doc Bay hold it against them. Doc Bay laughed and said that it seemed that these two had never heard of how to pincer an opponent. Otherwise, why would they leave such a gap for him to attack? One of the attackers was outraged by Doc Bay's arrogance and jumped high to attack. But before he could land on the ground, he used the lightning peaks technique right in the air. But something went wrong. With a terrible cry, he fell to the ground. And Doc Bay, who did not even move from his place, complained that this technique was noisy and tiring, and he was scared to the core. Rising from the ground, the warrior decided not to show off, but simply attacked Doc Bay with a spear. The tip of the spear was pointed directly at the man's figure. The fighter was already celebrating victory, but it's premature. Doc Bay stopped the sparkling weapon with 2 fingers. He held it so tightly that the warrior could only ask the enemy to let go of his spear. The second fighter hurried to the rescue of his comrade, but both of them were thrown away by a slight movement of Doc Bay's hand. Then the second fighter used the 9 tiger fist technique. Doc Bay thought that both of his opponents were very noisy. Doc Bay flew back from the impact of the Devi tiger fists technique. He stayed on his feet and noted that it was a powerful attack. Both fighters rushed at their opponent to quickly end the fight. Doc Bay repelled all attacks with lightning speed. He also mocked the fighters and demanded that they show him what they were capable of. This irritated them, and they loudly demanded that he shut up. Doc Bay jumped high and both fighters followed him. A huge explosion thundered in the sky. The fighters cleared their throats and took a deep breath as they sank to the ground. Doc Bay emerged from the cloud of dust and joyfully asked if his young friends were already exhausted. He is not interested in fighting them. The fighters looked at the smiling Doc Bay and thought that he was a real monster, and a person could not be so strong. And this despite the fact that he didn't even pull out his weapon. The fighters had one last chance to defeat the great warrior. Suddenly Doc Bay's face distorted. He noticed that his little finger was bleeding. He shouted that this was terrible. How dare they leave a mark on the body of the great Doc Bay? He drew his sword and said that now the battle will be real. The warriors were surprised to notice that Doc Bay's sword was not sharpened. At this time, a thin red stripe crossed their heads. They fell to the ground, and Doc Bay sheathed his bloody sword, lamenting that the guys were called masters, but a basic attack knocked them out. 10 years later, Doc Bay sat on a rock under a sparkling waterfall in the midst of beautiful nature. He thought about how in the beginning he took the sword to survive. He fed from the floor like an animal and twirled his sword endlessly. He became a vagabond, traveled all over the world and saw many masters, and he won everyone. More than once he found himself on the edge of life and death, but he was able to become even stronger. No one could stop him. He was the only one unrivaled, and he could dominate. However, he was mired in a viscous emptiness, and in order to get out of the emptiness and madness enveloping him, he came to this place, and in the end was able to find the answer. This answer is a celestial being. He has reached a level that can no longer be increased on Earth. Martial arts are over. Now he must become a celestial to achieve the highest degree. He spent 10 years in great hardship. Now he goes to become a celestial. He soared into the sky, scaring the flying birds. A voice from heaven told him to stop. Ghostly figures appeared in the sky and looked at him sternly. Doc Bay hovered in the air, and the figures surrounded him and carefully peered into his face. But he was not taken aback and greeted them, saying that despite the fact that he sees only huge heads, he is glad to say that a new celestial is coming to them. The heads started talking among themselves. They felt the vibrations of the blood and wondered how someone who killed so much could become a celestial being. His entire body is imbued with the energy of death. He has a lot of anger, although he also has an amazing talent for martial arts. But you can't take him with you. Doc Bay heard the word, impossible, and it amazed him. He asked what this meant, and the voice explained to him that he was forbidden to ascend to heaven, but he was given another chance to wash away the sins of the past. Doc Bay shouted that he had suffered so much to come to them. How could they not accept him? He demanded that they stop talking nonsense and immediately make room for him. The Celestials saw that their new comrade did not understand the words, and they had one way, to send him to a new life by force. He scattered all the clouds that enveloped him and freed himself. They were surprised at what a stubborn frame they came across. One of them even took on human form and really wanted to beat up the impudent bastard. He wove a fireball and threw it at Deok Bey. But Deok Bey smashed the ball, shouting that no one could stop his ascent. The Celestials tried to shame the arrogant man and did not understand who raises such people. And Deok Bey rushed towards his goal, not paying attention to what he was told. Suddenly the voice of a child sounded, saying that he could solve everything. Deok Bey was indignant that such a little thing became a celestial being. The child blew a drop from his mouth, which swallowed up Deok Bey, and he couldn't break it. The child continued to blow on the man. Everything went dark in Deok Bey's eyes. He was choking. He thought that he had been thrown out of the sky, but he would still come and finish off all the Celestials. He will definitely return. He lost consciousness underwater. He needed to get up and gain strength. But a voice reached his consciousness, calling some gentleman and asking if the gentleman had come to his senses. The young man said that he caused her so much trouble. She thought that something irreparable had happened. Deok Bey didn't understand where he was or what it all meant. He raised his hand and was surprised that it was so white and plump. He pushed away the girl who was leaning over him, and he ran to the mirror that he noticed in the room. What he saw left him speechless. A thin boy was reflected in the mirror. He started screaming and couldn't stop. He fell to the floor and couldn't believe it was himself. The young man shouted that his master should not exert himself so much. He asked him who he was, and the young man became worried that he might hurt his head when he fainted. He replied that his name was Kim Jong-san, and that he was helping the son of the Namgun family. Then he asked who he was, and Chung-san replied that he was the second son of Namgun Hyuk. Gun Hyuk burst into tears and repeated that this cannot be, it is just a dream. He asked what year it was, and Jon-san replied that 70 years had passed since the founding of the Joncheon Union, and he ran for the doctor. Gun-hek thought that at the time of the founding of the Union he was 80 years old. He decided to ascend after 90 years, which means that his age is now 150 years old. He was reborn as the second son of the Namgong family. Apparently the Celestials mocked him so much. What bastards they are! He shouted it straight into the sky. 60 years have passed. All his fighting skills have been lost. But he decided not to lose heart. Although he had a different body, the experience and memories remained with him. And now he will again reach the top from the very bottom. He decided to get out of the room and see what Gun Hyuk's body was like. He got out into the yard and saw the guards, which I wanted to kill, but decided that it wasn't worth doing this on the first day of rebirth. He decided to run through the yard unnoticed, but realized that he was suffocating. He made a sharp leap to quickly cover the space of the yard, but he found out that he couldn't make a breakthrough. Then he tensed all his muscles, and I heard the crack of breaking bones. At that very second, he realized that his leg was broken. It was very painful, and in response to his cry, Jong-san and the doctor were already running towards him. The doctor put a cast on his leg and sternly warned that his patient should not do jumping, and Gun Hyuk wondered if he was now a crystal vase. And then the gravity of the situation dawned on him. The doctor said that Gun Hyuk's body is easier to break than any crystal. He doesn't have enough energy, and a medicinal decoction has already been prepared for him. The patient should never strain himself. Gong Heng angrily demanded that everyone leave and leave him alone. He swung at the doctor, and then he dislocated his shoulder. The doctor said it and everyone left. Gun Hek decided to find out why his body was so frail. He realized that all his energy flows were clogged. 9 energy flows. This means that Gun Hyuk is terminally ill. He again turned to the Celestials with a question. How did they manage to put Deok Bey, whose body was harder than a mountain, into such a pitiful carcass? These are just lawless people, not celestial beings. He will definitely take revenge on them. He clenched his fists so tightly that one of his arms suddenly hung limp. He shouted that if there was someone outside, let them bring a doctor. The doctor said that the arm was broken and provided first aid. He said that Gun Hyuk's body was like an eggshell. If he didn't twitch, it immediately cracked. The guy gloomily comprehended reality and ordered everyone to leave the room. The servant and the doctor bowed and left, wishing the fragile gentleman good night. The unfortunate man thought bitterly about the fact that he used to crush his enemies like ants, but now he cannot crush an ant. He reminded himself that he was the great Deok Bey, so it was not right for him to give up, and he immediately regretted that he had tightly clenched his remaining intact fist. He decided that he had only 2 ways to overcome this test. The light heart flow technique, which gets rid of dark energy and allows him to gain strength, and the technique of filling the heart and muscles. Both of these techniques must be used. He dreamed that by using these techniques, he would gain such strength that he would become cooler than himself. He immediately began to implement the decision. Jong-san walked through the yard with medicine. He walked to the door of his master's room and wondered why it was so quiet there. With horror, he noticed that his master was bleeding from his head. He tried to close the supposed hole in the guy's head with his hands, but it didn't work out well. A stream of energy threw him against the wall, but the bleeding did not stop. Gunhek continued to meditate. Blood poured onto his face. Everything turned white before his eyes, and he woke up in bed, bandaged in the manner of a mummy. He thought that he had only just begun to control energy a little, and immediately became disabled. Jung-san gave him an expensive pill to take called Cheongeum Hwan. This medicine gives 10 years of energy, and is very expensive. The effect was instant. The guy sat up on the bed, but not for long. A second later, he was already lying helpless again. He decided that he would definitely fix this carcass into which the damned Celestials had so brazenly shoved him. He angrily asked Jung-san where he could find martial arts books. The young man was surprised why his master would have such an interest. The young master yelled at him for asking such a question, but he didn't know the answer. Finally, the bandages were removed, and Gun-hyuk carefully walked around the room. He decided to choose the technique that would suit this body. He liked this idea so much that he threw open the window and shouted that with new technology, new opportunities would appear. He didn't take into account that it was winter outside, and the cold air quickly drove him under the blanket. Then he decided to move without taking off the blanket, so as not to be attacked by the harmful frost. But the weight of the blanket pushed him towards the floor. Gong-hen did not at all expect that his body would not be able to withstand the weight of the blanket, and was completely upset. It was late evening when Gun-hyuk figured out how he could leave the room without risking his life. He tore the blanket and stuffed cotton wool into his clothes. He went out into the courtyard and looked at the main tower of their family. She looked grand. He remembered how in a past life he communicated with the Sword King, and he was very proud of the achievements of his family. One day they were fishing, and the Sword King said that the Namgun family had a rare library. Dak Bae then believed that a library was just pieces of paper collected together. But the Sword King continued to boast that the library contained the 1,000-year history of the Namgun family, and a lot of useful information. Now Gunhek really wanted to get to the library, but the guards stood in his way. They pointed their guns at him. He remembered his former skills and attacked the guards. They fell to the ground, and Gunhek thought that the one who pointed the weapon at him had never survived. But the guards calmly stood up without any traces or injuries. They recognized the young master and asked the second son of the Namgun family to forgive him for his rudeness, after which he was allowed inside without hindrance, and the guards decided that such a case urgently needed to be reported to the head of the family. Gun-hyuk entered the library and was terribly surprised. The library was huge, and he hoped to find everything that interested him in it. He spent the whole night searching, but found nothing. It wouldn't be a shame to burn such a library, just useless books. He became so nervous that his heart let him know that it was tired. Gunhek sat helplessly on the floor, and thought that he had received a guy with a difficult fate and poor health. We need to do something urgently, otherwise he will meet the god of death before he meets the Celestials. He caught his breath and left the library. Suddenly a loud cry of the baby knocked him to the ground. A huge figure was approaching him. The scream was repeated, and from its power the guy again found himself on the ground. Gun-hyuk could not understand what kind of man was yelling at him like that, and the man yelled that he forbade Gun-hyuk from entering the library, caring for his health. The servants turned to the man. The head of the family and Gun-hyuk realized that this was the father of the body into which he was shoved. The head of the family ordered all the servants to leave, because he would talk to his son as a ruler, and not as a daddy. As soon as the servants left, the ruler grabbed his son in his arms, called him son and hugged him tightly. He asked if his beloved son was cold, and why he went to the library with his feet. Gun-hyuk decided that he could easily deal with such a fool. He made an unhappy face and said that he needed a medicine that enhances energy and a suitable technique. Dad said that there would be no problems with the medicine, and even if he didn't dream about technology, martial arts were contraindicated for his sick son. No matter how Gun-hyuk asked, his father was categorically against any techniques. Gunhek was angry with the stubborn guy and decided to change tactics. He pretended that he felt so bad that he was going to faint. The dad picked up his son and didn't know what to do. His son, in a dying voice, begged him to allow him to simply read books about martial arts, without their practical application, purely theoretical interest. Inner Dak Bae was outraged that he had to humiliate himself like that. Dad burst into tears, feeling sorry for the poor child. He agreed to everything. Finally, Gun-hyuk went out into the courtyard and went to the secret library. She was much smaller than the one everyone knew about. It contained techniques that could only be used by those who were related to the head of the Namgun family by blood ties. And Gun-hyuk didn't care about his promise to study all the techniques only theoretically. He sat in the library until late at night, reading and memorizing. He learned that there were 5 techniques: Heavenly Thunder, Emperor, Emperor's Dominance, Blazing Lightning, and 13 Rolling Thunder, and the Thundering Spiritual Sword. But none of them suited his current carcass. Even though this body had no strength, it still got hungry. He was about to go out to dinner, but tripped over a book, and he stretched out on the floor. Then he noticed that one tile did not fit tightly to the floor and became interested in this. He tried to pull it out with his hands, but he almost tore his hands off. Then he made a lever and tried to lift the tile. So he succeeded. The tile flew away. In a hollow in a pile of dust lay a book. Gun-hyuk was happy that he seemed to have found the main character. He dined with great appetite, swallowing huge pieces of meat. Jong-san said that this is the first time he has seen his master eat well. He usually picks at his food for a long time. After eating, he took the precious medicine, and I decided to start practicing immediately. In the evening, Jung-san was walking through the house and saw a lonely figure standing. This was the eldest heir of the Namgun family. He again brought strengthening drugs and left them under the door of the room. Jung-san thought that the eldest heir does not know how to express his feelings. If he is so worried about the health of his second son, then why does he never come to see him? Gun-hyuk worked on himself. The Dark King's mixed technique of heavenly energy made Dak-bae the strongest warrior, but Oan was not suitable for the new body. He needed to strengthen the bone tissue based on the techniques, and then apply the rest of the techniques. He was confident that Dak-bae could do it. The most important thing will be the harmony between the mixed heavenly energy and the Changcheon techniques. He needs to cleanse the dark energy and add clean energy. Jong-san carried a large tray of food and was happy that Gun-hyuk was eating well. He approached the guy's room, but a sudden explosion threw him aside. She rushed to Gun-hyuk, who sat motionless. He opened his eyes and joyfully said that he had finally broken through the channel. He ran to his dad, who was afraid that his son was feeling bad again. He immediately wanted to run to his son, but his eldest son said that it was not worth doing this now. Hyung-san confirmed that the doctor has now said that Gun-hyuk needs to stabilize. The father thought that Gun-hyuk had found something in the books and caused trouble again. The next morning, Gun-hyuk struggled to do push-ups from the floor and thought that he had only broken through one channel, but he almost died. The father and the doctor were amazed when they saw what the guy was doing. He only did a few push-ups, and his body refused to work. The doctor took his hand and noted that his pulse had improved, and the flow of energy had become wider. Before the doctor had time to say this, the father embraced his son, shouting how well done his son was. Daddy is so happy to see his son healthy. Gun-hyuk felt that his shoulders could not withstand his dad's hug. The doctor warned that the fragility of the body was still strong, and that one should be careful in expressing feelings. Gun-hyuk shouted that the child was injured. Dad remembered that he had an urgent meeting of the elders. Hyung-san reminded that there is no meeting today, but Dad said that's why it's urgent. He told his son that Daddy had important things to do, and wished him recovery. Gun-hyuk was indignant that the father of this carcass screwed up and left, and if he had not been formally his father, he would have gotten it. Dad wished his son to hold on and ran away, and Gun-hyuk screamed that he couldn't hold on because no one had returned his shoulders to their original state. A month has passed. Jung-san stood in the courtyard and watched his young master run back and forth. A guard approached her and said that after his illness, Gun-hyuk woke up as a different person. He jokingly suggested that he had exchanged souls with someone. Jung-san advised him not to talk nonsense and immediately said excitedly that she no longer sees the young master. She assumed the worst, and with horror they saw that Gun-hyuk jumped into the water. He plunged into the water. The guard said that the depth of the pond is not even a meter, so it is impossible to drown here. Jong-san said that the young master's tricks drove him to a nervous breakdown. There was joy in the city. People bought sweets for children, and the children were very happy. But this joy was short-lived. The sweetness suddenly disappeared from the girl's hands. It was Gun-hyuk who passed by and snatched the dessert from the child's hands. He walked through the central area and thought about finding a place where he could drink something stronger. Suddenly he heard the sound of a fight. 3 guys beat one. The boy broke out in tears and ran away. He asked Gun-hyuk for help and said that he was being cowardly beaten by the crowd. Gun-hyuk said that they beat him because he is a weakling, so why help him? He advised the boy to figure it out on his own, because life is a jungle. He continued on his way and looked for a place with drinks. A stranger approached him and said that if the gentleman was looking for a tavern, he would take him to the best one. They walked through the narrow streets of the city. A stranger led him to some place, and Gun-hyuk was very surprised at what he saw. It looks like someone has fallen into the tiger's mouth. The guy was surrounded by very dubious people. Gun-hyuk realized that there would be no drinking here, and the stranger took out a knife and advised him not to even think about escaping. The bandits discussed the guy's rich clothes and thought they were lucky. The huge bandit said that the guy could give them everything he had and go home safe. Gun-hyuk replied that he did not want to do this. He said that until now, he himself had taken everything from everyone, but no one had robbed him. The bandits laughed cheerfully when they heard this statement. One said that the gentleman was raised like a houseflower, and he doesn't know anything about real life. The bandit promised to beat Gun Hyuk, but he was not very afraid. He threw the candy aside and prepared to fight back. The bandit swung his huge fist, but Gun Hyuk hit him hard in the face and he flew to the side. The robbers were very surprised by this turn of events. Gun Hyuk's hand hung limply. Fortunately, it was not a fracture but just a dislocation, and the guy quickly cut his arm. One of the robbers attacked Gun Hyuk with a knife and was going to kill him. Gun Hyuk dodged the knife and blocked the robber's hand. At the same time, he struck the attacker in the jaw. He flew back, and the one who brought him here had already attacked Gun Hyuk. Gun Hyuk intercepted the hand with the knife, and with his free hand he struck the bandit in the jaw. He thought that fortunately his body was fine this time. He turned to the bandits who did not risk attacking him and asked what they said about the law of the jungle. The bandits decided that such an impudent bastard should be punished, and everyone rushed at him. Gun Hyuk knocked down the center attacker with such force that he dropped his knife. He kicked the second one and punched the third one. All strikes reached their target. The bandit planted his face on the ground. The leader asked in horror, what did they encounter on the way? Gun Hyuk replied that he does not yet know how to control energy, so he has to use force. One of the bandits came to his senses. Gun Hyuk said that it pisses him off because he fought as hard as he could. But he didn't kill anyone, he only beat him a little. Because of this, he considers himself a weakling. The leader of the robbers shouted that they had met a real devil in the flesh. Then Gun Hyuk said that he was challenging the leader to a fight. The leader, beside himself with rage, rushed at the guy. Suddenly he fell to his knees and asked for forgiveness. Gun Hyuk noted that the bandit's priorities changed quickly. He replied that he knew how to assess the situation very well. To survive in the darkest sounds, you need to be quick-witted. He said he had some remnants of gangster honor. Gun Hyuk was about to leave, and said that he did not believe the bandit, and he was right. He was clutching a knife behind his back. The leader of the bandits changed his face and said that he would have to believe. With these words, he attacked Gun Hyuk in the back. The bandit jumped up and screamed, "Will you believe it?" Raised the cleaver over the guy's head, but the cleaver stuck into the ground. Gun Hyuk managed to jump away and turned to face the attacker. He soared above the robber and calmly said that he understood everything. The bandit was amazed that his plan had failed. The first son of the Namgun family sat in his office and examined the sword. Chon Sung told him that the young master walked towards a busy area and nothing bad should happen. The first son sheathed his sword, and the young gentleman drank vodka greedily. The leader of the bandits served him. When Gun Hyuk demanded more alcohol, the leader said there was no more. Gun Hyuk was angry. He just wet his throat and the drink was already gone. The leader reminded that this was already the 9th bottle. He said they spent all their money on high-end drinks and snacks, and won't the young master's face crack from such an amount? Besides, drinking so much is bad for young people. With a strong kick, the drunken Gun Hyuk sent the bandit to the floor. No one dares tell him what to do. He began to intimidate the bandits and shout that in the good old days he would have cut off their heads. The bandits were scared. Without finishing his threat, Gong Hen fell to the floor and fell fast asleep. The bandits decided that while there was a chance, they could escape. But their leader said that they shouldn't do anything rash. Maybe he was testing them this way. We need to make sure he's asleep. He approached Gong Hyun and said that he had definitely passed out. At this time, the guards approached and asked, "Who dares to touch the son of the Namgong family?" The guards lined up and the eldest son of the Namgun family walked between them. The bandits recognized the famous dragon sword. They realized with horror that this idiot belonged to a powerful family. The leader of the bandits heard Gun Hyuk mutter in his sleep that the nasty celestials would rather kill him than put him in such a body. He quickly covered the guy's mouth with his hand, and he said that the young master was delirious, but they did not force him to drink. Dragon Sword told the bandit to remove his dirty hands. The bandit obeyed, but then Gun Hyuk woke up and demanded more drink. The Dragon Sword kicked the bandit with force and threw him away from Gun Hyuk, and he said that he warned them to keep their hands off the guy. When the guard brought the young master home on his back, Young San was horrified by the smell of fumes and the fact that the guy was so drunk, although he was not allowed to do this. Gun Hyuk looked at the Dragon Sword and asked, "Who is it?" Jung-san was surprised how it was possible to get so drunk that he didn't recognize his older brother, and Guk-hyun was surprised that he had an older brother. The elder brother did not say anything but listened carefully. He turned to the bandits and said that he would punish them. The bandits were outraged and said that in this case they were the victims. Gun Hyuk turned around at the noise, and the young woman said that his brother was punishing the robbers. He will give them a proper lesson for disturbing the peace of young Master Namgung. If something happens to his brother, the heir always loses his temper. Gun Hyuk thought that it was a shame for the bandits to be beaten a second time. In the courtyard of a rich estate, a young man is training with a sword. His technique is brilliant. His sword strikes are precise and lightning fast. Not even a minute had passed before he hit all the rotating targets. A tall man approached him, his father. He said that his son had reached the 10th circle of the lone sword technique and could without a doubt be called the Tiger Sword. The father continued that now everyone considers the best heir to the Namgun family, but they simply do not yet know that his son is no worse. But soon everyone will know everything. The son said that he would do everything to meet his father's expectations. When the young man left, the father said that it looked like the boy would be able to defeat the Namgung dragon sooner than he expected. The Tiger Sword will defeat the Dragon Sword, the tiger will devour the dragon, and the man himself will only have to defeat the sky that is above the dragon. His face was distorted into an evil grin and he crushed the seal. Gunhek greedily ate honey soup, which is very good for a hangover. Chan's son watched him with a gloomy face. He asked her what happened. The young man shouted that his behavior was very dangerous. His bones had only recently fused, and he ran away and got into a fight. Why is he doing this? He needs to take care of his body, not destroy it. The young master didn't pay much attention to the maid's screams. He just asked where that wonderful medicine was. Why didn't he receive it today? Chonsung replied that such medicine is not easy to get. It's not like bringing the neighbor's dog into the house. To get one pill, you need to give several gold bars. Gunhek thought that everything was cheaper in his time, but why couldn't such a great family afford such expenses? A rival of the Namgun family, the father of Tiger Sword, hosted an informant at his estate. He brought him a message from the Cholgon fortress. They asked what the situation was and conveyed that they were ready to provide support. A distant informant reported that the Namgun family was experiencing difficulties. The head of the family was obtaining a valuable medicine and spent everything he had on it. He has no gold now and one can even expect his ruin. The man thought that for many years the head of Namgun had been trying to fill a leaky jug with water. The weakest second son in the history of the Namgung family is Namgung Hyuk. His body is like a crystal vessel, and from birth he has 9 yin energy streams. He's good for nothing. And in order to save the useless guy, all the family's reserves are spent. The head of the family, because of a defective boy, cannot engage in public affairs. The man was happy that the number of his followers was growing due to this. The informant said that Gun Hyuk has been acting strange lately. Not only did he start training, he also went out into the city, got drunk and was carried home in their arms. The man said that you shouldn't pay attention to such garbage. You need to continue to monitor the head of the family and his entourage. The man thought that Gun Hyuk decided to flutter before his death, but no one would be surprised if he died suddenly. Gun Hyuk did not suspect anything about the family's competitors' plans for him and continued training. During this training, he did not dislocate either his shoulder or his wrist. His body is slowly getting used to the load. He needed expensive and effective drugs and realized that financial problems could complicate this task. He needed detailed information, but walking around the estate and asking questions was not an option. Gun Hyuk wondered who he could get the information he needed from. Suddenly he remembered the Black Traders. Black Traders are an underground organization that collects dark information. Black traders are ready to sell everything that brings money, even the secret intrigues of the emperor. A guard from the Namgun family came to Sword Tiger and asked if he had heard about the news. This cockroach drank himself into unconsciousness yesterday. Sword Tiger did not understand which cockroach he was talking about. The guard said that besides Gun Hyuk, there are no cockroaches in the Namgun family. He continued that this freak goes to the library and started training, although before he couldn't even hold a broom in his hands. The guard continued that if it weren't for Gunhek, and they drank this valuable medicine, they would have been world-class masters. He didn't like the fact that if Gun Hyuk was the son of the head of the family, then everyone was running around with him, and he was also showing off. Sword Tiger said that Gunhek was no match for them, so let his comrade be quiet and behave carefully. The guard said that he personally wanted to check what condition Gun Hyuk was in now. He left, and the Tiger Sword advised him not to do anything wrong. Gun Hyuk was walking calmly along the road, and suddenly, from a push from a passing guy, he found himself on the ground. He called out to someone passing by. The guy looked around and asked what Gun Hyuk wanted. Gun Hyuk stood up and said that if you bump into someone, you usually have to apologize. The guy said he didn't want to do it. Gun Hyuk was cold to my apologies. Then the guy clenched his fist and swung at Gun Hyuk. But before he could hit, he got hit in the face. Immediately he got hit in the face again. Gun Hyuk continued to hit him, and the guy thought that he should have just apologized. He fell to the ground from the blows and shouted for Gun Hyuk to stop. Gun Hyuk said that ill-mannered idiots should be punished in order to learn politeness. He turned and walked in the other direction, but his opponent decided to punish the cockroach after all. He took out a knife and rushed at the leaving guy. Gun Hyuk stopped him with a back low kick. The attacker flew far back towards the fence wall. He flew into it with such force that he almost broke the wall. Gun Hyuk asked, "How can a guard attack from behind?" Is he really the guard of the Namgong family? He remembered the events of his past life and decided that there are traitors always and everywhere. He sat down in front of the guard and thought that you should get into a fight when you are confident in your opponent. The guard lay unconscious. Gun-hyuk asked him who he was. The boy bought a bun from a street vendor. Just as he wanted to eat it, the bun disappeared from his hands. Gun-hyuk stole the boy's bun and, not paying attention to the child's cries, thought where he could find black traders. He saw a sign on one of the doors and remembered that this was how merchants indicated their presence. A man was sitting at the table in the room and thought that there was trouble with the prophet this month. A question came from the threshold. Were the black traders here? Gun-hyuk said that you need to furnish your workspace brighter, otherwise it will be difficult to find. He began to feel the wall, not paying attention to the man's screams. Who was this guy pressing against him? Gun-hyuk pressed on the recess in the wall, and a secret room opened. The seller could not understand how the boy found the secret warehouse of rare goods the first time. He grabbed his sword and demanded that the boy leave. Just anyone could not enter here. Gun-hyuk said that he is not just anyone. The merchant jumped out from behind the counter, shouting that the guy was not just anyone, but a corpse. There were sounds of blows and cries of pain. A second later, Gun-hyuk was shouting indignantly that no one understood him, and they immediately started beating him. And now he sprained his wrist again. The merchant humbly asked for forgiveness. Gun-hyuk went into the secret room and was surprised at how much merchandise there was. It was all stolen. Gun-hyuk said he doesn't care about thefts, he just wants information. The story of the last 70 years, including the victory over the demonic horde. After some time, Gun-hyuk came out of the store in complete shock. The new knowledge shocked him. It turned out that the winner of the battle with the demons was the god of martial arts, Cheon Uijeum De Hep. Nothing was said about Dak Bae Hahu Young. Cheon Ui of the Jongcheon Alliance staked his destiny on defeating the demons. For more than a month, the two armies fought and the Union was able to win. This great victory is the merit of the great Cheon Ui. The demons were defeated, but their leader was a terrible monster because he killed two of the best masters with his bare hands. He was nicknamed Xing Ma, and Ma John is one of the demon army. They killed him without any problems. Gun-hyuk was horrified by the falsification of history. The battle lasted 7 days, and not more than a month the best warriors attacked him. Cheon Ui conspired with the 5 great families and betrayed Dak Bae, but now he is a hero. Dak Bae himself was made the demon king. Why was it necessary to change history? He suddenly got a headache. He found out that the Namgun family are weaklings, have long been in last place among the 5 great families, and are generally inferior to everyone in terms of wealth. Although during the Sword King, the Namgong family was at the very top, after the king's death, they only went down, and because of their 6-second son, they actually sold everything they could. Although the Namgong family still has influence, they are like the sun at sunset. Gun-hyuk realized that the Celestials had played another trick on him. Not only is he sick, he is also poor. Chon-sun was very worried about where his young master had gone. She said that the head of the family was calling him, urgently. The father and the guests were waiting for his son in the yard. Gong-hyuk urgently remembered that this was his dad. Next to him was his elder brother, whose name, it seems, was Gong-ren or Dragon Sword. But he had never seen a guy with a wrinkled face next to his dad before. Dad said that his son had questions. The unfamiliar man continued and asked, was it Gun-hyuk who beat So-ah until he lost consciousness? Gun-hyuk didn't even understand who So-ah was. He was puzzledly silent and the man started yelling at him. Dad invited the man, whom he called brother, to listen to the guy, but the man was indignant that his self-indulgence had raised an insolent scoundrel. Gun-hyuk realized that that guard was the son of this man, and if Dad calls the man brother, then he and that guy are relatives. With joy that he understood everything, he smiled and the man was dumbfounded by such impudence. The beaten So-a was rolled out in a stroller. He looked so-so. His hand was in bandages, his head was in bandages. Gun-hyuk didn't understand what was going on. The guy remained alive, and that's good. So-ah confirmed in a weak voice that it was Gun-hyuk who brought him to this state. Dad asked his son if it was true that he beat So-ah like that. Gun-hyuk denied everything. From such impudence, So-ah shouted that the bastard was lying. Gun-hyuk swore that he did not lay a finger on his relative. Dad believed his son, and suggested that maybe So-ah was injured while doing combat training. The brother's jaw dropped at this suggestion. So-ah doesn't lie. Dad said that his boy had a body as fragile as a butterfly's wing. He couldn't. The brother replied that according to rumors he had recovered and was training. Dad replied that it had only been a month since Gun-hyuk felt better, and he was certainly no match for So-ah. The brother attacked So-ah and shouted that he had really lied about everything. At this time, So-ah's brother stood up for him and said that So-ah is impudent and has his own mind, but he never lies. Gun-hyuk's older brother in turn said that he believes his brother, and So-ah. The young people looked at each other intently. They grabbed their swords and Gunhek watched with interest. The situation took an interesting turn. Who could win the fight? But the brother of the head of the family immediately stopped the quarrel and shamed the young people. His son apologized to the head of the family, and Gong Ren apologized to his uncle. The uncle attacked Gunhek, demanding that he tell the whole truth. Gunhyuk asked, does he really want to know the truth? The guy said the truth is, everyone listened to him carefully. Then he coughed, and blood gushed out of his mouth to the great horror of everyone. Hyung-san led him into the room. The head of the family turned to his brother and said that he saw everything himself. Such a weak and sick guy couldn't do anything to Soa. Brother said that his Soa is not in the best condition either, so they can discuss it later. They said goodbye and left. So-A was very upset about her appearance. The father said that they need to be patient. The day will soon come when they can take revenge. When Young-san and Gun-hyuk walked around the corner, the guy pushed the young man away and said that he no longer needed her. He asked in surprise, isn't the young master sick? Gun-hyuk said he was just pretending. He was too lazy to come up with excuses, and thanks to his pretense, everything ended quickly. Jung-san said that he did not recognize the master, and these oddities began to appear on the day he became very ill. Gun-hyuk yelled that all this was nonsense. It would be better if she brought him a sword for training. The head of the family was very worried about Gun-hyuk's health. The eldest son said that he had recovered. The son said that Jung-san said that it was a sham. Dad realized that his son really beat Soa. The eldest son said that it is difficult to judge this, but if after such short training he was able to do it, then he is a genius. Father and son admitted to each other that they wanted it to be true. Gunhek found a secret place in the forest and hoped that no one would see him there. He bandaged his wrists well so that they could bear the load, and he made the first swing with his sword. The sword seemed very heavy to him. He understood that in his current state, he would not be able to compete with the best fighters. He began to perform techniques with a sword, and it flew in his hand. It doesn't matter what they came up with in history. He now has other tasks. He chopped leaves and branches, and thought that he needed endless training to achieve even a small fraction of the strength that he had in his previous life. Gun-hyuk was training, and thought that the energy of the Dark King Chang-cheon's technique had doubled. There are benefits from life and death training. His sword flew faster and faster, and finally he was able to cut down 3 thick trees with one blow. However, the guy was dissatisfied with the result. He understood that there was still a long way to go, and thought that he had a weapon that was unusual for him. He needs to adapt the Namgong family's sword techniques to his weak body. He decided to try the technique of flashing lightning and 13 peals of thunder. You need to make it more laconic and put all your strength into one crushing blow. He concentrated and swung his sword. Clouds of dust and smoke obscured the sun. Gonghek was pleased with the result and thought that he had changed the technique, and now it can be called the 3-peel sword technique. It will take him 2 weeks to master it perfectly. The great Dak Bei could do this in a day, but now he has to deal with such little things. Jong-san came to his father, who was sitting behind the ledgers. He complained that the Namgung family's finances were very small, and there were many problems. He said that he called his daughter in connection with young Mr. Heck. Has he really changed as much as everyone says? The young man replied that over the past 6 months, he had become a different person in both body and mind. He has become much healthier, although sometimes he trains too hard and doesn't feel well afterwards. The father asked if he was still taking the medicine. The young man replied that he simply absorbed this medicine. This medicine is so expensive that it is a huge burden for the family. The father replied that it would be necessary to reduce his intake, but the head of the family has his own view on this. The father said that warriors only care about martial arts, but families need money to survive successfully. People like him and his son should become the support of families. Jong-san was getting ready to leave, and his father asked if it was hard for him. The son replied that it was hard, but he would endure it. Gunhek bandaged his hand and thought that his body could not withstand such training. He called Young-san to bring him more medicine. Even 2 pills wouldn't hurt him, but Jong-san didn't respond. He decided not to go far today, but to practice in the yard. He swung his sword with all his might, but the sword stuck powerlessly into the ground. Today Gong-hyun was in a particularly bad condition. He decided that he should rest before the servant brought him the medicine. A dark figure watched Gong-hyun, and the man thought that the guy was nothing special. However, Gong-hen noticed the spy and thought that a rat had gotten in on them. He thought that the head of the family had put him under surveillance because he was worried about his son. The spy reported to the head's brother that Gun-hyuk was not dangerous. He was clumsy and weak. The head's brother thought that Soa was just being lazy, so he got it like that. But it's still a shame to receive this from the weak Gun-hyuk. If only Soa had even a quarter of his older brother's abilities. He said that there was no longer any need to watch Gun-hyuk, but to prepare for a great deed. The spy asked if it was too early to start moving. The head's brother replied that it was time to nurture the planted seeds. Tongues of fire rose above the crowns of the green forest. All the trees were fallen, and clouds of dust enveloped the guy's figure. The effort and tension caused his nose to bleed. He just overdid it a little, and immediately there was blood. And there is a long way ahead, and this carcass does not obey him well. Fighting with trees is boring. You feel the taste of battle when you hear the groans of your enemies and see their blood. He went home in the hope of improving his health with medicine. He entered the estate and Yong-san called him. Gun-hek demanded medicine, but the young man replied that now was not the time. Something terrible had happened. A meeting of elders has just begun, and they are discussing that the head may have his post taken away. Gun-hek said that anything can happen. Sometimes a person goes down. Jong-san shouted that he shouldn't talk about this as if it were the affairs of strangers. The head of the family is the young master's father. The young man continued that Gun-hyuk was also to blame for this situation. His father got medicine for him and spent all his gold reserves. And if the head of the family is removed from his position, there will be no medicine. The full scale of the disaster dawned on Gun-hek, and he shouted that this could not be allowed to happen. He ran to investigate, but the servant said that he had to run in the other direction. At the Council of Elders, they were indignant that such waste was indecent. The head did not think about responsibility at all, and he spent whole mountains of gold to heal Hek. But the head of the family repeated that he was going to cure his son. The head of the elders, Nam Gun-wi-gen, said that if the father does not abandon his son, he may lose his post. The father said that he would give up his place, because if he cannot protect his son, then he cannot take responsibility for all members of the family. However, he asks permission to continue treating his son. All the elders were shocked by this statement. The brother said that one cannot so easily avoid responsibility by leaving the place of head of the family. It's just an escape, but you have to be responsible for your actions. He proposes to analyze all his brother's actions over 10 years. The elders were outraged at this proposal. This seemed to them too offensive to the head of the family, but the brother insisted on his own and shouted that they couldn't afford to waste money on a child. One of the elders asked whether the gentleman really believed that the head spent money not only on Hek's treatment, and can he prove it? The brother replied that he could. He said the boy had recently started practicing martial arts and regularly drank himself into oblivion. The elders did not believe their own ears. You can't do all this with Hek's body, so the boy is already recovered. Is the head throwing money down the drain? The brother demanded that the head admit whether the money was going to a completely different place. At this time, the door opened and Gan-hyuk appeared on the threshold and asked what the problem was. The uncle said that it's great that the guy came. It's worth listening to his excuses. Uncle asked if Hek's 9 yin streams were cured. He replied that his condition had improved, but he needed to continue taking medicine and practicing martial arts. The uncle said that a lot of money was spent on the medicine, and the guy should give it up. Gun-hyuk replied that he had no intention of giving up the medicine. The uncle said that the guy became insolent because he thought he could succeed in martial arts, to which Gun-hek invited him to fight. My uncle's jaw dropped at such impudence. Gun-hyuk said that the fight would help prove that the medicine is beneficial and the money was not wasted. Then the uncle asked who he wanted to fight. One of the gatekeepers? Gun-hyuk replied that it was his son. Uncle was speechless from such a statement. Then he burst out laughing because the boy himself was climbing into the tiger's mouth. He immediately said that he agreed. Gun-hyuk's father tried to stop his brother and said that Hyuk was just a sick child. But his brother said that in this place, one cannot throw words to the wind, and one must be responsible for what is said. The elders confirmed that we must be responsible for our words. The uncle joyfully announced that tomorrow, a duel would be scheduled between his son, Jeong, and Gun-hyuk. Gun-hek demanded in return that if he wins, then no one will interfere in the affairs of the head of the family. Uncle agreed and said that if he loses, then both he and his daddy will have to answer for everything. The father swore strongly at his son, but the guy said that he had found an excellent solution to the problem, a duel. Dad was sure that his son had become healthier in body, and his mind had left his head for good. Chong-san could not understand why it was necessary to bring the situation to this level. The young master's body had just recovered, and he decided to throw it into the clutches of death. Hek told the guy not to spoil his mood, but rather let him give him a double dose of medicine. At this time, the father was talking with his eldest son and wanted to give him an assignment. Gongren promised that if he noticed that Hek was in danger, he would immediately intervene. The head's brother gave his son instructions and said that the outcome of the fight was predetermined, but there was no point in counting crows on the battlefield. Jong replied that the tiger is focused even if it has to catch a rabbit, so it will act like a tiger. Both fathers gave them tasks, on the one hand to protect Hek, on the other to destroy Hek, and both sons promised their fathers to fulfill their request. Morning came and everyone gathered to watch the fight, the only bets being on how long Hek would last before losing. Jong said that he lets Gun-hyuk attack first, so that he can put all his strength into the blow. But Gong-hek thought that his real rival was his brother Gong-ren, and really hoped to fight him. The head of the Namgun family announced the start of the fight. At that very moment, my uncle jumped up in his chair and stared at the field. The elders were speechless. People as one opened their mouths. Gun-hyuk stood and moaned that his arm hurt, and Jong lay unconscious at his feet. Voices were heard in the crowd. Sword Tiger Namgung Jong passed out. Everything happened in moments. No one saw anything. The elders discussed that it was just one strike. How can this happen after a month of martial arts training? The dark figure was watching everything, and the man thought that Hek had simply struck with a flourish. It seemed to him that it was something like a thunder fist. Hek did in a month and a half what would take decades. At this time, Gun-hek complained that he could not straighten the joint. Then Jong stood up and said that Hek cheated. There was no signal to start, and he attacked. Gun-hek said that as soon as he picked up the sword, that's how it began. The uncle immediately came to his son's rescue and shouted that Nam Gun-hyuk had vilely violated the rules of combat in a fair fight. The elder said that Hyuk was right, and Jong had screwed up. You must always be ready for an attack. The uncle shouted to his son so that this time he should not count the crows, but fight properly. People prepared to watch the fight, because they did not believe that Sword Tiger could lose so easily. Now everything is going to be really bad. So Ah shouted for his brother to show his best. Jong promised that he would do his best, and the fight began. Finally, we will be able to see his most powerful attack. He began to take his sword out of its sheath, but Gun-hyuk covered the distance between them in one leap, and he grabbed Jong by the hand, preventing him from getting his sword. Namgung Jong's face showed confusion. Gun-hyuk approached Jong and whispered that he didn't have a chance. He jumped back and got into a fighting stance. Jong attacked, but Gun-hyuk struck first. Yi Jong flew back. So Ah watched in horror what was happening. The elders couldn't believe their eyes, and the head of the family clenched his fists tightly for his son. Gun-hyuk whined that even though he attacked with his elbow, it still hurt. Jong shouted that if he pulled out the sword, then there would be nothing left of the petty scoundrel. Gun-hek advised him to try to get the sword. He said that he would give Jong a chance to demonstrate his signature move as a lonely spirit. Jong took out his sword and rushed to attack. Gun-hyuk immediately dodged the blow. Jong continued to attack, and his sword rushed with incredible speed, but not a single blow reached the target. The guy hoped that Gun-hyuk would soon get tired and would not be able to dodge so quickly. But Gun-hek did not get tired. He teased his opponent and said that he was too slow. Gun-hyuk continued to dodge the sword and suddenly approached Jong. He was about to punch him, but thought he might hurt his wrist again. He jumped back again, and Jong's sword stabbed into the ground, in the place where Hek had stood a second ago. Then Jong received an unexpected blow to the jaw from the right, in the same backhand. Without stopping, Hek carried out a whole series of blows. Jong had no way to evade. So Ah remembered that Gun-hyuk beat him in the same way. Jong's sword flew to the side, and he himself sat down on the ground. The next blow knocked him back. Gun-hyuk grabbed his injured arm again. He got angry at Jong for making him so angry that he forgot that he couldn't punch. And then Gun-hek discovered that he also had a sword, and I immediately decided to use it so as not to break my hands. The elders shouted that it was time to stop the fight. Gun-hek threw his sword aside and spread his arms wide. He picked up the scabbard, and he gave his opponent a super strong spanking. At the same time, he said that if you don't know how to fight, you shouldn't get into battle. Finally, his hand got tired, and Jong was completely beaten. He hoped that now Gun-hyuk would leave him alone. But Gun-hek remembered that his second hand was still working, and he continued the spanking. The elders demanded that this outrage be stopped immediately. Jong also asked to stop. Gun-hyuk was already in a frenzy and had no intention of stopping. Jong's father screamed with anger and powerlessness. Jong kept receiving blow after blow. Jong's father said his son lost. Gun-hek replied that now let the relative not forget these words of his, and he advised us to take Jong and start treatment immediately, because it would be difficult for him for several days. Everyone in the estate was discussing the fight. No one could believe that Mr. Hek was so strong, although he used to lie all day and could not even think about martial arts. One of the courtiers said that they say that if a person can overcome the energy flow disease, he will become the best warrior in the world. Apparently this applies to Gun-hyuk. We need to keep an eye on him. The head of the family also believed that Hek could become the strongest swordsman in the history of the family. Although it's too early to rejoice, because he only took part in a small fight. The interlocutor objected that Gun-hek recently could not bring a spoon to his mouth and fought not with anyone, but with the tiger sword. He believes that Gun-hyuk is a genius. Dad couldn't help but smile from ear to ear. The interlocutor said that he would direct all his strength to support Gun-hyuk, and now no one would be able to resist this. Not only his technique, but also his courage and the right attitude know no bounds. Dad was very grateful for such words about his son. Jong lay covered in bandages, and a doctor stood next to him. The father came to ask how his son was, and the doctor replied that he had many fractures and bruises and would be ill for a month or two. The doctor said that due to the fact that Jung is a warrior and went through a lot of training, he remained alive. Jung's father thought that his brother's youth helped him take the place of the head of the family, and now his little bastard is beating his sons. He swore that he would never forgive the head of the Namgung family, Chang Cheon, and his vile offspring, and the disgusting brat drank vodka in one gulp. Jung-san did not approve of the young master's actions. Kun-hyuk asked what Jung-san's expression was. He demanded that the young master tell what secret he used. Gun-hyuk did not understand the question. The young man replied that the result was such that it was impossible to believe, and how Gun-hek was able to defeat the tiger sword. Gun-hek replied that it was not a tiger, but a kitten. Chong-san said that probably the eldest heir Gong-ren used a disguise and came out instead of Gong-hyuk, and then he got hit in the head with a bowl. Gun-hyuk yelled that instead of useless conversations, the guy would bring snacks, because drinking without snacks is not good. Chong-san left, wishing the young master to continue drinking without snacks and earn gastritis. Gun-hek took the bowl off the floor and thought that now there would be medicine, but there was a problem with money. And then he noticed that his hands had turned blue. Gong-hyun felt very bad. He grabbed his chest with his blue hands. He realized that his energy flow was closing. Something urgently needed to be done, and Gun-hyuk dragged himself into the yard. The guards looked and did not understand what the young gentleman was looking for in the courtyard. The guy turned to them and called. His face was very scary. The guards went nuts at the sight of such a face. Gun-hek yelled at them to tell him where the medicine was kept. He furiously turned the pharmacy over and thought that this fucking loser was dragging him down again with his underdeveloped body. Techniques alone are not enough. He needs a lot of medicine to control the condition. Finally, he found the medicine that was kept in the casket. He immediately devoured everything, hoping that quantity would turn into quality. When the doctor brought the medicine, he went to the family treasurer and reported that the medicine was of excellent quality and the money was well spent. The treasurer said that although finances were a problem, he had collected everything he could and asked that Mr. Heck be treated well. The doctor said that he brought so much medicine that it would be enough for a year of treatment. The doctor decided to go to the pharmacy and look at the precious medicine. Before he could open the door, loud sounds and explosions were heard from the medicine warehouse. It also smelled very disgusting. The doctor called the guards with him. People coughing entered the pharmacy. To their amazement, they saw Mr. Heck there, who was very afraid. The guards watched as Heck's body changed and did not know what to do. The guy was enveloped in energy vortexes. His whole body was tense. One of the guards ran to the head of the family. At this time, Gun-hek came to life and stood up, and he told the guards that he was much better. At this time, the doctor discovered that his priceless medicine had disappeared somewhere. He screamed very loudly. Gun-hyuk said that he ate all the medicine in one go. He left the pharmacy saying goodbye, that now he needed something better. He walked to his room and did not pay attention to the cries of despair that the doctor made. Jong-san was carrying a snack to the young master and thought that it was hard for him to work like this. To his surprise, there was no one in the room. Gun-hyuk called him from the roof. Jong-san shouted that it was dangerous and let the young master descend carefully. Gun-hyuk said that he climbed onto the roof to think alone, and Young-san might as well get lost. Gong-hek thought that he needed more and more medicine because he could not break through all 9 energy flows with just one technique. He jumped from the roof to the ground, and his bones didn't break. The medicine strengthened them. In addition, the joints stopped clicking and no longer fall out. After some time, the elders discussed that Gun-hyuk's condition had improved even more, and he trains very actively. They told the head of the family that they were always ready to help, because after the dragon sword and the tiger sword, there was no one who showed hope, and they were very glad that Gun-hyuk showed such abilities. The head of the family said that since Heck had proven himself so well, he offered to entrust him with a small army. People doubted. They believed that Heck was too early to join the elite of their family. Heck needs to gain more experience, but the head's brother believed that Gun-hyuk should be given a chance, since his talent is exceptional, and there is no reason to stop him. The elders consulted and decided that this was true. The head's brother offered to give Heck the troops of the Thunder Dragon. Dad was very surprised when he heard this, but his brother insisted that Gun-hek would do an excellent job against the Storm Dragon army. The head of the family thought that things were bad. The Thunder Dragon army is a headache for the Namgong family. It includes capable, rude people who cause problems. Over the past 10 years, no one has been able to manage them. The elders also believed that it was easier to defeat demons than to control the army of a Thunder Dragon. The brother of the head said that he wanted to entrust the army to Jung, but Heck defeated him, which means Heck is the best. The elders decided that this was true, and a great opportunity to test Gun-hek's abilities. The brother told the head that if he did not agree, he could refuse. The head realized that then his son's authority would again be at zero, and he agreed. Heck happily listened to his father's proposal. He agreed. Dad said that in the army they fight all day long and don't listen to anyone. Heck liked this even more. The guy said that you need to beat the naughty ones well and everything will be fine. A messenger came running to the leader of the Thunder Dragon army. He said that they decided to give them to Gun Hyuk. The leader didn't believe it. Recently, Gun Hyuk couldn't get out of bed. But the messenger said that the Council of Elders decided so. The leader got angry and decided to show the elders who the soldiers of the Thunder Dragon army were. The messenger said that Gun Hyuk knocked out the tiger sword with one blow. The leader replied that a greenhouse flower was not capable of this. The entire army did not see the duel because they were having festivities. The leader said that it doesn't matter who won the fight, but if the boy pesters them, they will show him who is who. They will not harm him. They will simply teach the presumptuous boy about life. Gu Hek appeared on the threshold and said that the warriors live well. They have been walking since the morning. He sat down at the table with the leader and company, and he asked for some to be poured for him too. The leader asked in surprise, could the guy really cope with 9 streams of yin? Gun Hyuk said that he was not completely. Then the leader advised the guy to spend time in warmth and peace, but Gun Hyuk said that he needed loyal subjects to recover. The leader suggested that they would pretend to obey, and Gun Hyuk would pretend to be in command, and everything would remain the same. Gong Hek said that the Thunder Dragon army is different from those that include representatives of the elite. The Thunder Dragon gathers those who were born into poverty and think that if he has abilities, then he can behave at random. This army is made up of weeds who think they are flowers who have had bad luck in life. Many fighters became very angry at such words. Gun Hyuk promised that he would turn the useless idiots into an elite unit. Angry warriors surrounded him. The leader said that even he could not stop the warriors, so Hek had better leave and got up from the table. Gun Hyuk asked if he was really afraid. The leader wanted to hit the impudent boy, but his comrades reminded him that he was the son of the leader, and he needed to be careful. But the leader was not going to retreat and shouted that Gun Hyuk was about to die. A fist slammed into his jaw and cut him off mid-sentence. The leader flew far back. He broke the railing in flight and hit his head on the ceiling, and he fell unconscious on the floor of the first floor. The leader's comrades shouted that the bastard Gun Hyuk had killed their leader. The warriors surrounded Gun Hek, and he stood calmly among them. Suddenly he made several movements, and several screams were heard, and everyone who stood next to the guy ended up on the floor. Gun Hek said that it's nice that they are loyal to their leader, but they are stupid. If they saw his attack, then why did they fight? One of the soldiers stood up with difficulty and said that using weapons was dishonest. Gun Hyuk was surprised, since when did wooden chopsticks become weapons? Then Solat shouted that they would rather die, but not submit to anyone. Gun Hyuk agreed and poked the soldier in the ass with his stick. The rest of the soldiers were horrified by such cruelty. Gun Hyuk turned to the others and asked what they would do. The soldiers conferred with each other. They decided to take revenge, and one of them reached for an axe. They attacked Gun Hek from both sides. Gun Hyuk jumped out of the house, breaking through the roof. Both soldiers chased after him, shouting that he would not be able to escape. Gun Hek took a fighting stance in the air. Small steel sticks sparkled in his hands. The attackers were very afraid of such a weapon in the hands of Hek. The next moment, both the leader and his subordinates came to their senses in the net. They hung over the lake and could not remember how they got here. It seems that Hek blocked their energy flows with his chopsticks, and they passed out. Hek sat on the pier and asked if they had come to their senses. The leader shouted that the little bastard would not get away with this. But Gun Hek was not afraid, but simply lowered the net with people into the water. The soldiers really did not like such a cold bath. A minute later, Hek lifted the people into the air. The leader continued to swear that he would break the scoundrel's back as soon as he got out. But Hek dipped them into the water again. Jong-san brought the snacks ashore, and was surprised that the young master still did what he promised. Jung-san said that he thought that the master was just intimidating, but the Thunder Dragon has such a reputation that they cannot be intimidated by threats. However, he demanded that Hek get them before they drowned and became water ghosts. Jung-san was very worried that all the people died. Gun Hek obeyed and pulled out the soldiers. The leader asked what Gun Hyuk wanted, and he replied that he needed complete obedience. The soldiers burst out with curses, and again they found themselves in the water, and Gun Hyuk demanded that Jung-san pour him another glass. Jung-san didn't even think that his master was so cruel. The soldiers in the water thought that they needed to be patient a little. Hek wouldn't kill them. But time passed, and no one raised them to the surface. Then they realized that they were dealing with a madman and began to panic. Finally, they took to the air. The leader shouted that they would not obey him. It was better to die. Gun Hek happily agreed, and lowered the net into the water again. Finally, the leader asked for mercy. But again, they all found themselves underwater. On the next climb, everyone shouted that they were giving up. When they got ashore, the leader swore that he would faithfully serve Gun-hek. The rest also swore loyalty and fidelity. To enhance the effect, Gun-hek cut the leader's forehead with a sword and said that this would be proof. Then Jong-san came with a drink, but Hyuk was angry that he had been walking for so long and hit him with a stick. The soldiers were about to leave quietly, but Hek stopped them. The leader said that they wanted to go and rest, but Hek replied that he would not let them go. First, you need to clean up after yourself. He pointed to the mechanism that lowered the net into the water. It was huge and strong. It was made by skilled craftsmen. Hek said they built this for the soldiers, and they should clean it up. The soldiers got to work, and Gun-hek commanded that they work better. The soldiers thought that it would be better if they died. Now they would rest. A messenger came running to the brother of the head of the family with a message about the army of the Thunder Dragon. The brother said with hope that there was complete defeat there. The messenger replied that the view was terrible. Brother asked how badly Gun-hyuk was beaten. The messenger replied that Gun-hek was just fine, and the army was beaten and in complete submission to Gun-hek. The brother of the head of the family did not expect such a turn at all. Gun-hyuk ate dumplings and was in a good mood. The Thunder Dragon warriors carried him with the dumplings and Jong-san. They loudly pledged their absolute loyalty to their new leader. Jong-san said that he would stop mocking people, but Gun-hyuk believed that he needed to bring them to their senses. Then they would think in the right direction. Gong-hek said that the most effective ways to make an opponent surrender are through pain and fear. Only then will they truly obey. Young-sang realized that the guy had changed a lot and became very cruel. From the walls of the estate, the brother of the head of the family watched this performance, and he couldn't believe that the Thunder Dragon army was so at the mercy of this bastard. His interlocutor said that some elders had already seen this, and were very glad that someone was able to curb such hooligans. The head's brother couldn't believe his ears, and the interlocutor said that the elders approved of such training and education methods. He said that this is not training, but torture. The attempt to create the Heku problem gong failed. The brother of the head ordered to call the head of the army, Henmu. The entire army sat exhausted in the room. They couldn't even lift a spoon. A man entered the room and was surprised that the entire army lay exhausted and did not get up. It was the head of the army, Henmu. There were soldiers with him. The leader said that he doesn't want to communicate with anyone right now. Henmu laughed and said that Mr. Gun-hyuk treated them harshly, and they immediately lost their agility. Now the dragon's teeth are knocked out. One of the soldiers began to threaten Hyunmu, but the leader reminded him that the young gentleman might be dissatisfied, and he immediately sat down. Hyunmu asked if they would really endure all this, and wouldn't they get sick from stress. The leader asked him to shut up and get out. Henmu asked if the young master beckons them with his finger, will they run to kiss his heels? The leader was about to break Hyunmu for bullying, but he hesitated. Hyunmu asked why he was hesitating. Was he afraid that the young master would get angry? The door opened and Gun-hyuk appeared on the threshold and asked the leader if he had decided to fight. All the warriors turned to the door and looked at Gun-hek. He said that he did not want to distract them from dinner and rest because he was not a bad person. The soldiers thought that he was not a person at all, but a real demon. Gun-hyuk asked what the leader was doing with Hyunmu. The leader replied that he was cleaning his clothes, but Henmu shouted that the leader attacked him and grabbed him by the throat. Gun-hyuk said that they can fight as much as they want and went to the exit. Then he turned around and told the leader that, if he was beaten, he would wish he had died. The leader swung his fist and slammed his fist into Henmu's face. Amid the cheers of the soldier, Hyunmu fell to the floor. The leader said that he received orders from his leader to win. After that, everyone rushed into a fight. The soldiers of the Thunder Dragon army beat up the soldiers of Henmu. The fight continued, with Hyunmu's soldiers clearly losing. Blows flew at them from all sides. Bodies fell to the floor and flew in the air. Henmu shouted to his soldiers to hit back and not hesitate. At this time, the leader of the Thunder Dragon flew at him. He hit Hyunmu with a kick. Hyunmu fell to the floor. In the evening, the Council of Elders counted the losses. 5 had minor wounds, 23 had moderate wounds. This crowd will need a doctor. The head of the elders asked how this could happen, since they are all one family. The elders decided that they were too early to rejoice when they thought that Gun-hek had curbed the army of the Thunder Dragon. It is impossible to do anything with them. The head of the family demanded that his son explain himself. Gun-hek said that young people are just getting stronger in battles, and the Thunder Dragon also has wounded, so everything is fair. Uncle shouted that the Thunder Dragon only had 3 light damage and 4 medium damage, so not everything was fair. Gun-hek thought at this time that his soldiers had received so many injuries while fighting against a weak enemy. We need to punish them. The uncle continued that all responsibility now rests with Gun-hek, and the full severity of the punishment should fall on his shoulders. Moderate wounds cannot be forgiven. Uncle thought that now, after the punishment, Gunhek's authority would be completely undermined. Gunhek stated that the fight was started by Henmu's army and could not simply be tolerated. Force is usually met with force. If they were attacked by people from another family, would they also have to endure it? The elders agreed that the one who started the conflict was to blame, but the uncle insisted that Gunhyuk must be punished. Hek said he is willing to take responsibility if necessary. He said that he was responsible for the Thunder Dragon army, but the Henmu army could not escape responsibility either. Gunhek asked who is in charge of Henmu's army. The elders replied that his uncle was Namgunbek. Uncle mentally called Gunhyuk a little bastard, and Gunhek thought that his relative was planning something nasty. The guy suggested that all those responsible should receive a fair punishment. After all, the Namgung family prides itself on its honesty. Namgunbek couldn't say a word out of anger. Then he gathered himself and said that since everything happened due to rash words, let everyone punish their subordinates, and it will be fair. Gunhek supported his uncle and praised his wisdom. Pek thought that he would definitely take revenge. The Thunder Dragon warriors were in prison. One of them complained that he did not have time to eat before the fight and was now hungry. Others said that they did not know what punishment awaited them, and they could not think about food. The leader said that you just need to wait and not lose heart. The guard opened the door and said that everyone was free. The warriors could not believe their ears that they were really being released. They beat Henmu's warriors badly. How can they be released without punishment? But they decided that the young gentleman tried his best, and now they have a reliable rear. It is very good to have a reliable patron. The leader said it was too early to rejoice, but he noticed that all the soldiers were filled with devotion to the new leader of the army. The guard said that the young master would personally punish them, but now let them get out. After these words, all the soldiers decided to stay in prison. The guards tried to tear the soldiers out of their cells, but they held tightly to the bars and did not want to leave the cozy prison. I had to throw them out by force. Gunhek met his army. They said that they came at the call of the young master. Gunhyuk said he heard that they asked to stay in prison. The soldiers shouted that they had been misunderstood. Regarding the punishment, Hek said that this was to calm the old people down. What is the punishment for a child's fight? He asked what kind of box was in the yard. There were iron cannonballs in the box. Namgunbek was furious that he had been humiliated by the boy. His interlocutor reassured him that mistakes make people wise. Pak said that the elders began to listen to the boy. The interlocutor said that Bak was too carried away by the fight with Gunhyuk. Pek replied that Hek is the son of the head of the family, and the stronger he becomes, the more the authority of the head increases. The interlocutor said that it is impossible to deal with Hek within the family. He is under the protection of the head and elders. Then Pek said that if it was impossible inside, he would deal with Hek outside. He uses a slow and efficient method. The Thunder Dragon warriors with cannonballs on their feet ran, as Hek shouted that they were running slowly. He shouted that the elite troops could not move like turtles. The soldiers really regretted leaving prison. Winter came. The entire estate was covered with snow. Gunhek fell ill again and sat in a blanket in front of the hot coals. With cold weather, energy decreased very quickly. Hyung-san came in and said it was time for lunch. Hek began to swear from under the blanket. He was indignant that he was not served a single piece of meat. Chong-san said that the financial situation now is such that there is no money to eat meat. He said that in winter there are always more expenses, less income. Medicine costs money. All the money is spent. It has become even harder. Hek asked from under the blanket. It's all because of him. Young-san said that in principle, yes. Hek asked what happened to his medicine. To hell with her food. Chong-san replied that he had already consumed all the medicine at once. Now let him endure it. For a long time, Hyuk's screams were heard in the yard that he needed medicine urgently, and Young-san's answers that now was a difficult time. Through the snow, a detachment of horsemen led a herd of horses. Suddenly a net fell in front of them, and then they were surrounded by a ring of fire. In front of the riders stood a group of horse thieves. The riders shouted that they were from Eun-hyun's stable. The robber shouted that he didn't care and attacked the rider with his sword. The horseman parried the blow and shouted that Eun-hyun's stable belonged to the Namgung family. But the robbers knew this very well. The robbers killed one of the riders with a spear in the back. The leader of the robbers spat and said that they didn't even know how to fight back, and that they also belonged to the Namgun family. One of the horsemen attacked the robbers, but the leader parried the blow and struck back with his sword. The rider and horse fell to the ground. The army of the Namgun family came to the aid of the horsemen. The leader of the robber ordered to kill everyone. A battle ensued. The robbers attacked first, but the soldiers of the Namgun family fought very well and won. They defeated the robbers one after another. The robbers did not expect that the Namgung army had such strength. They did not think that the soldiers were head and shoulders above their best fighters. The soldier put a sword to the leader's throat and ordered him to surrender. The leader laughed and said that the soldier really thought that they were aimlessly attacking these particular horses of the Namgong family. Behind the soldier, a figure flew towards him, waving a sword. The soldier turned and tried to parry the blow. The blades collided in the air. The soldier struggled to hold back the stranger's attack. The striker was wearing a fancy mask. The attacker swung his sword and wounded the rider. The one with the horse fell to the ground. The soldiers realized that before them was not a simple robber, but a fighter whose skill was immense. They rushed towards the fighter and tried to outflank him. The fighter jumped up and began to strike with his sword. At full speed, the soldiers passed the battlefield, and the attacker ended up behind them. Both soldiers were dead. The warriors of the Namgun family lost the battle. The bandit leader politely thanked the masked stranger and said that he was impressed by how he defeated the elite of the Namgung family with one blow. The stranger said that if this is the elite, then he is disappointed. With these words, he left. The leader of the robbers ordered the horses to be taken away and the corpses to be burned. A huge raven flew over the snow-covered Namgung estate. He sat down on the roof of the house. In the yard, Gunhyuk was yelling that there was no need to play with toys, but to do business. The army of the Thunder Dragon, naked in the cold, threw cannonballs. They are very tired. It was very difficult to throw and catch cannonballs. Their former leader was unable to catch the cannonball, and the soldiers began to quarrel. Heck said that since someone failed to catch the cannonball, he added another 100 throws. Gunhyuk suddenly looked up and saw a raven. He thought he didn't know where the raven had come from, but he felt the energy fluctuate. The elders stood nearby. They were very serious. Gunhyuk decided that this did not concern him. They would probably organize a meeting. He was so lost in thought that he did not see the cannonball flying at his head. The soldiers gasped, expecting that the cannonball would kill their commander. But Gunhyuk, without even turning around, caught the cannonball with his hand. He angrily asked his soldiers, "Did they do this on purpose, idiots?" He added 1,000 more throws to them and promised to kill each one on the spot. The head of the family was informed that the horses that were being driven from Yunhyun's stable were captured by bandits. The damage was great. They said that these were mountain bandits, although it was not clear how they could attack the Namgun army. The financial losses are enormous, and there are human casualties. The elders and the head decided what was best for them to do. The head of the family said that in addition to financial damage, moral damage was also caused. They undermined the authority of the Namgun family. He ordered to send the best warriors to the Yunhyun stable and deal with this situation. It is necessary to catch the robbers, restore honor to the family, and compensate for financial losses. But all the best warriors in other places resolve conflicts. Unfortunately, there are no decent resources. Then the brother of the head intervened and said that there were resources. He suggested sending a Thunder Dragon army. He insisted that now the army was completely controllable. Gunhyuk would do an excellent job. The elders said that the plan was good. Gunhyuk was able to curb the Thunder Dragon army. It is impossible to protect a child all his life. We must give him opportunities. The head really didn't want to put his son in danger. He knew his brother was up to something. It was decided that Heck and the army would go to the stables. Heck was very happy with this decision. He promised that he would smear the robbers over the wall. Jong-san said that apparently the young master is very happy. Heck replied that he was going to deal with the robbers. The young man replied that people died there and it was dangerous. Heck replied that there was an opportunity to get money, and there was nothing dangerous about it. He ordered Chong-san to gather an army. Gunhyuk dreamed of entering the lair of mountain robbers and taking all the money. Then he could buy a lot of medicine. The weights were removed from the soldiers. They felt that it became very easy for them to walk. They were glad that they would go on a hike and not waste time on pointless training. Gunhyuk appeared on the doorstep and said that they were going to make money. The spy reported to Namgun Bak that the army of the Thunder Dragon had set out on a campaign. Peck put a letter on the carrier pigeon and sent the pigeon flying. The uncle thought that he would never see his nephew alive again and smiled. The horses were grazing on a snowy slope. They were watched by Sangman Chu, the owner of the stable. He said there had been a lot of horses here recently. The second man told his master not to be upset. Nothing could be done in this situation. Manchu replied that 100 thoroughbred horses were taken away and the Namgun family suffered losses. The man said that soldiers were sent to help them. Manchu replied that this was the problem. They sent an army of a thunder dragon with a young master at its head. His interlocutor was horrified. The young master is sick and the dragon army is uncontrollable. Manchu said that this is the worst option, but he cannot refuse such help. A messenger arrived and said that the army was already in the neighboring village and would soon be in the stables. Everyone was surprised how you could cover so much in 2 days. Manchu knew for sure that it would take 6 days to walk from the estate. Have they arrived? They saw a group of naked soldiers dragging a heavy stretcher. People were very surprised by such an entry of troops. The former leader of the army shouted that the young master was coming. The soldiers began to clear the snow with brooms. A carriage pulled by a strong horse arrived. The red carpet was rolled out. Gun-hyuk stepped onto the path. He yawned and complained of being tired. The soldiers greeted him like an emperor. Manchu introduced himself and greeted the young master. Gun-hyuk asked to be spoken to without formalities. The second man introduced himself as Tae-gon, the head of Kongon Fortress. Manchu explained that Kongon helped the stable during difficult times, and now he promises to help. Gun-hyuk realized that he might not be able to get the robbers' money alone. The head of the fortress said that he himself was very weak, but would do his best to help the young master. Manchu invited Gun-hyuk to go into the rooms where dinner was prepared. A treat was prepared for his soldiers, but Gun-hyuk said that before the meal there was training. The soldiers knew this very well. He sent them out to run 100 laps and then have lunch. Manchu had everything on the table: lamb, pork, chicken. The hosts were speechless when everyone sat down at the table. Hyung-san told the master to keep up appearances, but Gun-hyuk greedily ate the meat. Manchu said that they have a lot of meat, and they also have a drink made from horse milk. Gun-hyuk really liked the drink too. Tae-gon suggested that they go out tomorrow in search of the robbers. Gun-hyuk said that rushing would make people laugh, and he would be drawing up a plan for the capture for several days. Tae-gon decided that the guy was just scared. The leader of the robbers approached the masked warrior and reported that Gun-hyuk had arrived at the stable. The warrior said the guy took the bait. He said that he would look forward to the young master. Manchu sat in the room and tapped his finger on the table. Tae-gon came to him and said that today everything is the same. He heard the screams of the Thunder Dragon soldiers, winced and called them vile little people. At this time the soldiers were drinking vodka and were very happy. Gun-hyuk sat with them. He drank vodka along with his subordinates. A very angry Tae-gon appeared on the threshold. Gun-hyuk invited him to the table, but Tae-gon said that he needed to talk face to face and let the guy send his soldiers away. Tae-gon asked how long Gun-hyuk would sit idle. A whole week has already passed. Gun-hyuk said that it is very cold now, but Tae-gon wanted to know the real reason. Then Hyuk replied that if he caught the robbers, he would not receive a penny for it. Then he laughed and said it was a joke. He just wants to rest. There is good food here, and when he returns, he will again eat only porridge. Tae-gon said that he agrees to give everything to Hyuk. He promised that he would give him money. The sight of silver immediately made Hyuk want to start moving. Tae-gon was very unhappy that he had to give away almost everything he earned, but he said that he was ready to do anything for Hyuk. It can be considered that this is a manifestation of his respect for the Namgun family. Having counted the money, Gun-hyuk ran to catch the robbers. The carriage was driving through the mountains where there was snow. Gun-hyuk asked Tae-gon how long they had to go. Tae-gon replied that they were only halfway there. Gun-hyuk complained that he always gets motion sickness on trains. Tae-gon thought that maybe he shouldn't drag this idiot somewhere, but just kill him? But he promised that he would pay more as soon as they finished off the robbers. Then Hyuk promised that he would be patient. Hyuk lay in his cart and thought that they had almost arrived at the place, and now it would be difficult to move on the carts. He stretched out and said that he was just bored. Tae-gon said that from now on we need to move carefully. There might be an ambush. There really was an ambush. Two people sat on the mountain and watched the cart ride. They were glad that the bird had fallen into the trap, and were going to report it. A voice from above said that they had fallen into a trap. A Thunder Dragon soldier sat on a tree and looked at the spies shining in ambush. The spies did not understand when the soldier was able to get around them. The soldier jumped from the tree and took a fighting stance. The robbers rushed at him, but he drew his sword, and he ran towards the bandits. He deftly dodged all the blows, and I thought that now it was much easier for him to move than before. Is this really the result of those hard training sessions? One of the robbers was thrown to the ground. Tae-gon heard strange sounds in the mountains, but Hyuk reassured him that nothing bad was happening. His guys just caught the spies. Tae-gon was very confused when he heard about this. Gun-hyuk said that he also has scouts and very good ones. He called soldier Jang-woo, and Tae-gon thought that Hyuk was not such a fool as he wanted to seem. Chang-woo said that he had dealt with all the spies. Gun-hyuk got terribly angry. He said that one had to be killed in order to get information from him. Chang-woo realized that he screwed up and didn't think. The army of the Thunder Dragon walked through the mountain forest. Tae-gon and the soldiers watched them. Chang-woo said that he sees a fortress. Gun-hyuk said that the fortress is not impressive. The fence is wooden and the houses are poor. He knew that this could not be called a fortress of robbers. Suddenly, robbers jumped out from behind the trees and attacked their squad. Chansung shouted that they were ambushed. The young man turned around and saw that Tae-gon had a knife at his young master's throat. Chansung shouted, "Does Tae-gon really think that his poor family can betray the great Namgun family and survive after that?" Tae-gon said that the guy is an idiot if he doesn't understand what's going on at all, and advised him to look around. Their entire group was completely surrounded. Tae-gon shouted for everyone to give up if they don't want to die like dogs. The Thunder Dragon soldiers did not fuss. They said that the master was right, and if someone helps selflessly, then he has poison up his sleeve. Taegon did not understand why they were not afraid, and shouted that if they did not drop the gun, their master would suffer. Gun Hek gave the command to the group in front to attack the robbers, and everyone else should attack the scoundrel. And the soldiers of the Thunder Dragon army rushed to attack. They broke through the encirclement and defeated the robbers. The soldiers slashed with swords left and right. One of the enemy soldiers attacked the Thunder Dragon warrior, but he quickly dodged the sword, and he struck back. During the battle, Chang Wu still managed to shout that the training had helped them a lot. The former head of the army wounded the enemy with a sword, and he fell. Taegon's soldiers saw that their allies were being pushed back and decided to unite. But a huge Thunder Dragon soldier appeared in front of them and said that now he was their rival. He rushed to the attack and easily fought all opponents at the same time. Jongsan saw that he was beating some soldiers with the bodies of others and went nuts. Taegon shouted, "Have these soldiers gone crazy and don't think about the life of their master?" Gun Hek asked why they should care about him and snapped his fingers on the blade of the knife. The blade broke in half to Taegon's horror. Gun Hek jumped and freed himself from his opponent's grip. He delivered a powerful blow that caused Taegon to turn over in the air. He fell and lost consciousness. Chong Sam joyfully greeted his master. He rushed to hug him and asked if the gentleman was in pain anywhere. All the prisoners were on their knees, and Hek said that there was no need to be afraid of them. They were very weak fighters. The former head of the army said that he could not believe that such people could attack the stables and defeat the family's warriors. Gun Hek said that they had a leader, and immediately a dark figure appeared behind them. The masked warrior slowly approached Gun Hek's squad. Gun Hek asked, "Why did this fool put on a mask?" Many warriors of the Thunder Dragon wanted to deal with the leader. One of them ran forward, although his comrade stopped him. The soldier jumped high, waved his sword, and threatened to cut his enemy into two halves. Blade collided with blade. The soldier's axe collided with the warrior's sword. The soldier was surprised by the strength with which the warrior stopped the axe with one hand. The masked warrior said that his opponent was simply pathetic. His sword melts with terrible speed. The soldier could barely parry the blows. Gun Hyuk watched the fight carefully. The masked warrior approached the soldier and pushed him away with his bare hand. He dropped the axe and fell. The former leader of the army attacked the warrior from behind, but he quickly turned around and repelled the attack. Chong Wu ran to see if his comrade was alive. He said that everything was fine, but his honor had been violated. 3 warriors decided to join forces to defeat one, and they rushed to attack. The masked warrior was calmly waiting for them. They approached him and prepared to hit him from the right, left, and above, but the warrior rotated his sword so quickly that no one could approach him. Chang Wu tried to pass the defense, but nothing worked out for him. The warrior threw him back. Other soldiers attacked from both sides, but they couldn't break the masked fighter's defense. They were completely exhausted, but could not get close to the enemy. Axes, swords, and other bladed weapons could not harm a warrior. The Thunder Dragon soldiers shouted that this was not an ordinary mountain bandit. He was fighting their leader and his assistants alone. The masked fighter ran to attack. The soldier prepared to repel her and swung his axe. He threw an axe straight at the enemy, but the masked fighter fought off the weapon flying at him. Then he said that only a complete idiot could throw a weapon. The soldier made a tackle and rushed at the enemy, trying to knock him to the ground. He held him in pincers and shouted to his comrades to attack, even if they hit him. The head of the army jumped high and flew towards the fighter, who could not move, but he waved his sword, and he created a protective field that threw back the head of the Thunder Dragon. The masked fighter freed himself from the hold and said that the strategy was not bad, but they attacked the wrong person. He raised his sword over the lying soldier and said that it was time for this life to end. At this time, something flew past and hit the sword, stopping it. An ordinary chopstick stuck into a tree. The warrior asked what idiot joked like that just now. Suddenly Gun Hyuk appeared next to him. With one blow of his fist he threw the enemy back. The soldiers discussed with admiration that Hek had sent an enemy flying with one blow, which 3 could not cope with. Hek asked the soldier if he was okay, and he thanked him for his help. He ordered the wounded to be observed while he dealt with the masked fighter. The masked fighter said it was better than he expected, and he was surprised. If he had not covered himself with the sword, his ribs would have been broken, and so only the sword broke. Hek asked who his opponent was, to which he replied that the guy would soon die, and this information was of no use to him. Hek countered that he was going to live another 100 years. The fighter replied that he shouldn't praise himself so much because of one attack, and he took a fighting stance because he no longer had a sword. Hek also clenched his fists and prepared for a fight. The enemy attacked, but Hek easily dodged the attack. Gun Hek simultaneously attacked and dodged the blows. The fighter was very fast. His hands were enveloped in a golden haze of energy. At one point, Hek managed to get close to his opponent, and he punched him right in the face. The mask that hid the fighter's face was partially broken. and he himself could hardly stand on his feet, jumping far to the side. The fighter wiped the blood from his mouth and thought that Heck dodged and responded to his attack so confidently, as if he knew his technique. Heck said that he saw that his opponent was using the Dark Dragon Blood Claw art. This means he is one of those who took the wrong path. The fighter asked in surprise, "How does Gun-hyuk know this?" Heck replied that he felt an internal energy full of impure intentions. He wonders how the fighter was able to complete the creation of this art. The fighter thought that he had only recently completed this technique, and only very experienced old men could learn it. Then the fighter decided that there was more to hide and wove a huge golden dragon from the energy. He decided to hit with full force and sent a stream of energy towards Gun-hyuk. Gun-hyuk jumped high to avoid the blow. Streams of energy captured him. All the soldiers noticed the dragon and could not believe their eyes. They thought they imagined it. They did not understand what kind of terrible technique this was, but they saw that their master was even more terrible. He dodges so naturally, as if he knows how to escape from this technique. Gun-hyuk dodged and thought that, fortunately, the master had not fully mastered this technique. In a previous life, he would have easily dealt with such a fighter, but now he is in a pitiful and weak body. However, he shouted that he could easily be dealt with by a fighter from this level and jumped to attack. He continued to say that against someone who knows how to evade, such techniques are useless. His opponent got angry and fired a new energy arrow straight at Gun-hyuk. Gun-hyuk strained himself and created a stream of his energy, which flew towards the enemy. Two energy flows intersected. The masked fighter couldn't believe how this was possible. He shielded himself from the attack with his hands. Gun-hyuk attacked from the air. He kicked his opponent. He missed the blow and flew to the side. Gun-hyuk rushed to catch up with the enemy. He struck him in the jaw, and he carried out a series of blows to the enemy's body and head. The soldiers said that they could not see the master's fists. With such speed he struck. They decided that now they would always obey their master. The masked fighter was almost defeated. He was completely exhausted. Gun-hyuk was unhappy with his body. In Dak Bei's body, one finger would be enough for him to deal with the enemy. But he decided that it was enough that he won and hit his opponent in the chin. He began to fall and Gun-hyuk only had to deal the final blow. The masked fighter flew to the ground like a bullet. He fell and was partially covered with snow. When he sat under the tree, he looked very sad. Tae-gon realized that everything was lost and grabbed his head. He decided that Gun-hyuk was still a monster, and now the fortress would come to an end. He decided that it was better for him to escape and crawled towards the exit. He hoped to choose the moment and get rid of Gun-hyuk. Gun-hyuk at that time approached the wounded masked fighter, and he asked who fought him. The guy replied that he was Nam Gun-hyuk, the second son of the head of the Namgun family. But the fighter said that this could not happen. The fighter said that Heck could not walk, and now he is resisting attacks that the best masters could not withstand. But he never said that he and Gun-hyuk ordered the prisoner to be tied up and taken with him. The fighter did not agree with this and swallowed some kind of pill. Black smoke came from it. Gun-hyuk shouted for the soldier to move away because it was poison. The body of the masked fighter caught fire, and after a few minutes, only a skeleton remained from him. It was a fiery, deadly poison that melts the flesh and leaves only the skull and bones. Gun-hyuk thought, what reason made the fighter hide his identity like this? The soldiers were collecting horses. The head of the army approached Gun-hyuk and asked why they were collecting stolen horses. Heck asked how many there are. The head of the army replied that there were at least 100. Gun-hyuk said that there should be 90 horses, and 10 should be sold on the black market. The head of the army agreed, and Heck was glad that they understood each other. At this time, one horse approached Heck, and Heck shouted that this horse should also be taken away. Tae-gon was crawling up behind him with a knife in his hand. Gun-hyuk turned around and asked Tae-gon what he was doing there. Tae-gon rushed at the guy with a knife to kill him. Gun-hyuk looked at him calmly. He hit Tae-gon and he lost consciousness. After some time, he came to his senses, and the first thing he saw was Gun-hyuk. It turned out that Tae-gon was buried up to his neck in the ground, which surprised him very much. His soldiers were buried with him. Gun-hyuk asked if Tae-gon was going to commit suicide like the guy in the mask. The soldier asked his master what to do next. Tae-gon decided that now they would interrogate him, but Gun-hyuk said that they would simply leave everyone here sitting in the ground. Tae-gon shouted, "Did the scoundrel really decide to freeze them all? If he and the warriors die, there will be an investigation, and it will damage the reputation of the Namgong family." He was immediately hit with a shovel. The Thunder Dragon soldier shouted that no one dare threaten their master. The soldier continued to shout that this bastard had led the entire army towards certain death and deserved death. Tae-gon said he was ready to tell everything. Gun-hyuk asked why there was nothing in the houses of the mountain robbers, and Tae-gon said that because they put together these houses for bait. Then Gun-hyuk said that it was impossible that the mountain robbers had no money. But now Tae-gon will be eaten by wolves and no one will know anything. Taegon said that they moved all the valuables to Kongon Fortress. He promised to give them the keys if they were released. Manchu and his assistant were waiting at the stable gate. A cart with soldiers arrived. Gunhyuk told the stable owner what happened, and they attacked Taegon and began to beat him. Gunhyuk prepared to leave the stables. The owner asked him to stay longer. He handed Hek payment for his efforts. Hek quietly asked the head of the army what happened to the Kongon storage facility, and the head replied that they took everything out of there at night. The vault was filled with gold figurines and silver. All this is great wealth. Hek knew that if he added the money for the sold horses, he wouldn't have to worry about the medicine for a while. He gave the command to return home. The head of the family and his eldest son listened to the messenger, who said that Hek had defeated the mountain robbers and was returning in triumph. The father was very pleased with his son's success. He ran to meet his pride, his youngest son. The head of the Thunder Dragon army greeted the head of the Namgun family. Dad looked for his son, but the soldier replied that he had gone away on business. Dad asked why there were so few soldiers. The head of the army said that he didn't know. He couldn't tell Dad that his son and the soldiers had gone to hide stolen goods. The black merchant was counting his income. Gunhek appeared on the threshold of his shop. The merchant asked what he was doing here if he had to fight mountain robbers. Gunhek replied that he had figured it out a long time ago, looked at the goods, and noted that the black market was not what it used to be. At this time, soldiers entered the shop with huge boxes in their hands. The merchant opened one box and saw many golden things. Gunhyuk said that he would sell everything for a decent price. He said that he would eagerly await the price, and if he was deceived, he would kill him immediately. The messenger informed the brother of the head of the family Peak that Hek had returned alive and victorious. Peck couldn't believe that the guy defeated the masked warrior. The envoy added that the owner of the Kongon fortress was also captured and brought here. Beck shouted that Taegon should have committed suicide if he failed the task. If he tells everything, there could be trouble. He ordered to get rid of Taegon, and the envoy promised that he would sort it out. And the brother of the head of the family thought how much longer this bastard would stand in his way. Gunhek received a receipt for a lot of money and was very pleased. Young-san shouted at him to get off the roof. The head of the family is looking for him. Gunhek jumped down and scared his servant. Jong-san shouted that there was a ladder and what to do if the young master broke his legs. Jung-san said that the head of the family is angry, that Hek missed the welcoming ceremony, and the guy ran to his dad. Dad screamed loudly that he could have delayed his son like that, and Gunrek calmly watched him. Hek slowly entered the room. Dad started screaming, but Gunrek ran forward to his brother. He hugged him, asked if he was hurt, and congratulated him on his victory. Dad admired the brotherly love and no longer wanted to scream. The chief elder also said that their main treasure had returned, and he also rushed to kiss Gunhyuk. Gunhyuk tried to break free from the tenacious embrace. Dad looked at this scene with emotion and regretted that there was not enough room for him to also hug and kiss the baby. But then he decided to join in the hug, which horrified Gunhyuk. In prison, Taegon shouted to the guard that they had no right to keep him locked up. He was the owner of the Kongon fortress. The guard tried to persuade him to sit quietly. Taegon argued that he was misunderstood and it was not his fault. He recalled that he had requested a meeting with Elder Namgunbek. The guard said that the elder would not meet with every small person, but Taegon insisted that the elder would come right away. The guard did not react to these words. At this time, his replacement arrived, who said that his comrade could already go to rest. He gave him a bottle of wine so he could have a good time. When the first guard left, the second one turned to Taegon and sympathized with the fact that he was having a hard time. Taegon realized that Beck had sent the guard and was very happy. The guard said that Elder Beck was being careful and would come after midnight and gave Taegon some fried chicken so he could have a nice meal. Taegon greedily pounced on the treat. The guard asked if Taegon had said anything unnecessary, and he shouted that he hadn't said a word. Then he felt bad. He turned blue and coughed. The guard said that if Taegon did not cope with the task, he should have committed suicide himself, and not make life difficult for others. Taegon was choking. He grabbed his throat and fell to the floor. Gunhyuk sat in the room and cleared his chakras. He was enveloped in a blue glow of energy. But nothing worked for him. He felt bad. He realized that he needed more medicine, and that another stream of energy needed to be opened. The only thing he liked was that the fist hit became stronger. The day had already begun, and Gunhyuk went to the prison to interrogate Taegon. Standing in the prison yard were his father and the elders who told him that Taegon was dead. The elder said that Taegon choked on a chicken bone. What a stupid death. Gunhek did not believe that this death was accidental. His uncle shouted indignantly, "Did the boy really think that someone from the family could poison the prisoner?" Gunhek said it was an interesting idea because many poisons leave no trace. The head of the family said that the doctors would figure it out, and Gunhyuk could leave. Gunhek agreed, and thought that now no one would know where all the treasures he stole from the fortress went to. He wished his uncle a good rest and left. Uncle was very annoyed by Gun-hyuk's piercing gaze. Pek came home and called his sons to him. He asked how they were feeling. Jong replied that he started training with the sword again a few days ago. Pak told his son to train, and he would continue to get medicine for him. He told his son not to forget that he is much more talented than Gun-hyuk. Pak told his sons that the atmosphere in the family is not very good now, so let them keep a low profile. Jong asked if it was because of Taigon's death. His father said that was true. Jong agreed with his father, but So-ah was indignant. Why should they suffer over such a small thing? Song-ah shouted that if Gun-hyuk brought this owner of the fortress, then let Gun-hyuk sort it all out. But what do they have to do with it? The elders are rushing around with this boy, and if So-ah had a security detachment, he would have done no worse. At that time, a flower in a pot flew past him and crashed against the wall. Dad decided to raise his son this way, and shouted that he needs to have a conscience if he has no manners. While the cockroach Gun-hyuk is crawling, what did So-ah do? He just drinks and walks around. After these words, he drove his son out of sight. So-ah left and started drinking on the street. People looked after him. He was very angry that everyone was only talking about Nam Gun-hyuk and was going to crush this cockroach. A group of young people called out to him, and the guys asked if So-ah had been too angry this morning. They said that they came at his request, but a member of the Namgong family needs to keep up appearances. So-ah said that they need to discuss something, not here but in a quiet place. The doctor could not recover from the sight of the money in the box. Gong-hek said that there is enough here to buy medicine of the highest quality. The doctor said that money alone is not enough to get medicine. Gong-hek said that if you raise the price twice, you can buy everything. Therefore, as soon as the medicine arrives, let him pass it on through Young-san. Gun-hyuk was in a great mood. He had plenty of time and money. He decided to have a drink and a snack, but he was stopped by Young-san and asked what the young master was up to again, and why does he walk around so happy. Gun-hyuk asked why he had to report to the guy what and how he was doing. He's not his wife, apparently. Jong-san shouted that it was his responsibility to take care of the young master's health before, now and in the future. Gun-hyuk turned his head and shouted that he saw his father. Young-san turned to greet the head of the family, and Gun-hek disappeared as if he had never existed. Jong-san scolded himself for falling for such tricks every time, and threatened that the next time this bastard breaks his leg, he won't come near him. So-ah sat at the table and cursed. He remembered how his father spoke badly to him because of Gun-hyuk. His comrade said that he called them to help him deal with Gun-hyuk. After all, they are the 10 strongest swords. Among them is the heir of the White Spirit, Chuja Cheol, who knows the Great Flame spiritual technique, the best warrior of all. The junior warrior Maun Ren also has a force that cannot be ignored. All the rest are also recognized talents. They said that although Gun-hyuk is not the same as before, he cannot stand against 10. They take Gun-hyuk on themselves and let So-ah deal with the consequences. If the son of the head of the family is about to die, there will be a big uproar. So-ah said that his father will handle everything. At this time, So-ah saw that Gun-hyuk himself was sitting at the next table. The guys decided to get down to business right away, and they asked So-ah to leave here. If they are seen together, So-ah will be in trouble. Gun-hyuk did not suspect anything, and calmly ate and drank. The guys approached him and introduced themselves. Gun-hyuk didn't recognize any of them. The guys thought that although this bastard belongs to the Namgong family, how can one not recognize the young master from the White Spirit Fortress? Maun Ren also introduced himself, and said that they were friends as children. Gun-hyuk said that the greetings can end, and what do they want? Males that stink of sweat gather in large groups only for a specific reason. Ma said that they had heard about what happened at the stables, but he thought to himself that the bastard had become too impudent. They continued that they could not ignore such news, and prepared a party in honor of such a victory. They rent a ship and invite Gun-hek to have a drink and enjoy the beautiful views of the river. Gun-hyuk smiled and said that the offer was excellent. He walked into the trap himself. A group of guys walked through the forest. Gun-hek walked behind. Chol had no idea that Hyuk was following them so calmly and not suspecting anything. Suddenly Hek stopped and said that they had gone through enough and it was time to reveal their true motives. Chol said that they only had a short distance to go, but Hyuk replied that the road to the river was in the other direction. The guys thought, why did he go with them if he knew the right road? Are they an idiot? Chol said that although Hyuk is a daredevil, he cannot resist everyone at once. Gun-hyuk said to find out, you have to try it. Chol laughed out loud, and he woke up buried in the ground. Blood was flowing from his nose. He remembered what Gun-hyuk asked before the fight. If they were from famous families, then how did they grow up to be so stupid? All the fighters, shouting that he did not dare scold their families, rushed at him. Hek began deftly throwing stones at them that he had picked up from the ground. One stone hit Choi's cheek. Before he had time to understand what was happening, Gunhek flew at him and knocked him to the ground with one blow. A few seconds later, all the attackers were lying on the ground without signs of life. And then we woke up already buried in the ground. Some heads were sticking out. The Thunder Dragon soldiers finished digging. Hek thanked them for their good work. The soldier said that these children had completely lost their fear. How dare they attack the young master? They were glad that the children did not go to the ship. Otherwise, the young master would have drowned them. Gunhyuk said that when children misbehave, parents have to answer. He said that they should write letters to the parents, saying that if they want to save their son, they should come alone to the wild mountains in the east. Everyone took brushes in their teeth and wrote letters like this, but the handwriting was so unclear that the parents hardly understood what was being written to them. Then Hek ordered the prisoners to be released one hand at a time. In the White Spirit Fortress, the owner of the fortress, Chu Hyun-un, asked where his son Chol was. Does he still get drunk in a tavern? The servant said that although the guy was late, there was nothing to worry about. No one would dare attack someone from the core. Besides, Chol is a wonderful warrior. At this time an arrow flew into the yard. The servant rushed with a sword to defend his master, but he raised the arrow on which the letter was tied. Dad read it with wide eyes. Who dared to steal the young master of the White Spirit Fortress? He will catch everyone and skin them. Hyun-un came to the appointed place and ordered his soldiers to seal everything here. A man approached him, whom Hyun-wook recognized as the owner of the Cheolun Fortress. He asked why he was here, and he replied that his son had been kidnapped. The owners of other fortresses came up and said that their sons had also been kidnapped. They could not believe that there was someone who could kidnap the sons of 10 influential families. Elder Paik walked through the forest in the dead of night. He walked up to a small house and opened the door. Someone was sitting there and someone sitting in the house ordered Peck to speak. Then Peck shouted that he was wondering why the boy was still alive. Because of him, the great plan cannot be carried out. Gunhyuk's authority grows, and the family becomes suspicious. The energy of power flowed from the house. Peck clenched his fists and prepared to fight back. A masked man came out of the house and told Peck to calm down, because they had the same goal. Buck said that some elders treat Nam Gunhyuk well, and even the 4 who are on their side have been doubtful lately. The masked man asked, can their plan fail only because of Gunhyuk? Peck admitted that this was true. The masked man said that it was surprising that Gunhyuk defeated their mercenary, but the plan should not be delayed because of one boy. Pak said that we still need to wait, but the masked man said that they had waited so long, and the plan that Pak proposed was cancelled. Now they themselves will enter the game. Peck was very surprised by this statement. The masked man said that such a decision had been made, and Pak would actively join them. Peck objected that they would make a big fuss, but everything had already been decided. He then said that if the plan had changed, he needed to proceed with caution, and he would contact them as soon as everything was settled. The masked man told Peck not to look for him until then, and left. Peck realized that something terrible had just almost happened to him, and they contacted the tiger to get rid of the fox. They say that the one who gets involved with the tiger goes to the end. So now there is no turning back, and no matter what happens, you need to go to the end. The masked man walked through the forest and thought that this cunning old fox could not be trusted, and he'll have to put a collar on him so he doesn't kick. He told the black-robed warrior who was running after him to bring Namgun Bek's second son, the one who is the fool. So to him. The masked man looked around and said that a fierce wind would blow in the area this winter. At the rocks, the fathers of 10 families were surprised to see who had invited them to the meeting. Gunhek, accompanied by his soldiers, met them. He said that he didn't kidnap anyone. He just decided to teach their children a little lesson. The fathers were horrified to see the deplorable condition of their children. Chol's father rushed to his son screaming, "My poor son." He promised that he would deal with Gunhyuk, even if their family was destroyed. He checked that his son was alive and grabbed a sword to punish the criminal. All the heads of the fortresses drew their swords and pointed them at Gunhyuk and the soldiers. One of the soldiers suggested burying the fathers too, but Gunhyuk suggested just starting a conversation. The heads of the fortresses rushed at him with swords. Gunhyuk said that their children attacked him first, and he had the right to defend himself. The fathers stopped and could not believe that this was true. Gunhyuk suggested that they ask their sons if this was true. The owner of the White Spirit Fortress asked his son if this was so. Chol said that they did not intend to kill him. Dad just gasped at his son's confession. All the other guys shouted that Chol was telling the truth. They only wanted to break Hyuk's arm or leg. Fathers gathered around their sons and shouted that their children were idiots. They began to beat their children themselves. Cholya's father shouted that because of him, their fortress could come to an end. The other fathers also beat their children and shouted that they did not have children but some kind of enemies. After the moment of education, the fathers gathered in a circle and conferred. They said that although the authority of the Namgong family is not the same as before, they can still destroy smaller families. The head of the White Spirit Fortress said that there is only one way to resolve the situation. They approached Gunhyuk, asked for forgiveness, thanked him for not killing their children, and said that they were ready to be punished. Gunhyuk asked them to stand up and not embarrass him. He said that a small, generous compensation would be enough for him. He continued that his health is still poor, and he needs expensive medications. His heart hurts and he might have to complain to Dad. The heads of the fortresses said that everyone would pay. Gunhyuk thanked him, and said that tomorrow he would send the guys from the Thunder Dragon army to them. His soldiers watched this, and thought that the scoundrel had a talent for taking money, was incredibly cruel and felt sorry for the heads of the fortresses. Finally, Gunhyuk asked the fathers to write something. Gunhyuk and the soldiers walked through the forest. Hek said that tomorrow morning they will go collect money. The head of the army asked why Hek took receipts from his fathers, especially with the wording, when he asks for help, "Do you have to help?" Hyuk's father rules the powerful Namgun family. Why does he need the help of the middle clans? Hek replied that the world is different. A naked shirt and one head are good, but two are better. So Ah couldn't wait for the results of his evening walk. He decided to go to Hek and find out everything. On the way, he met Jung-san. He was carrying a large box and told So-ah that it contained medicine. So-ah decided that Hyuk was dying and asked if he was badly injured. Hyung-san replied that no one was injured. It was a common medicine. So-ah clarified, "Are the young master's arms and legs not broken?" Chong-san replied that it would be better if they were broken, but his master is very cheerful and energetic. So-ah couldn't understand how this was possible. The soldiers of the Thunder Dragon army were carrying heavy bags of money. So-ah decided not to find out what these bags were. Jong-san brought the medicine, and Hyuk was unpleasantly surprised that for that kind of money he received so little medicine. Hyung-san said that the doctor did his best. It's hard to find good medicine now. Hek swallowed several pills at once and said that he would prefer to find the ingredients of the medicine and make it himself. Hyung-san doubted that Hyuk could do it. Hek again scolded the Celestials, who had forced him into this body. He challenged the Celestials and vowed that he would collect all the money and get the best medicine. Spies sat on the roof and watched. So-ah walked through the yard. They wanted to attack him now, but decided that there were too many eyes around. They decided to wait for the right moment. So-ah walked into the inn and yelled at his friends about why Hyuk was still alive and well. They sadly turned their beaten faces towards him. Chul said that they have nothing to answer to So-ah. So-ah said that their 10 swords were worthless. Chul grabbed him by the shirt and told him to shut up. Then he strongly pushed So-ah, who yelled that everyone here had forgotten who his father was. Chul said that he remembers perfectly well who his father is, and will leave it at that. Chul continued that no matter how much Namgun-baek talks about influence, he will never become the head of the family. Everyone else said that compared to Gun-hyuk, So-ah is nothing, and there is no reason to continue communicating. They left So-ah on the poo and left. He shouted at their backs that they would regret it, but they did not pay attention to it. So-ah didn't understand what Gun-hyuk had done to them, that they had gone crazy. The soldiers came to Gun-hyuk with a report that the items were temporarily in the warehouse and could be picked up at the appropriate time. But when will that time come? Drug prices will rise, so it is necessary to ensure a stable cash flow. The soldiers thought that they had never seen a greedier man. Hyuk asked Chang-woo how he thought capital could be acquired. He replied that he needed to save money and save money. Hek did not like this. The second soldier said that we need to invest. In gold, silver, horses, silk, and sell when the price is highest. Hek didn't like this either. What if the price goes down? Hek said that the best way to get rich is through black money. There are both large and medium-sized organizations in the surrounding area. It will be very profitable if Hek gets the money they manage. The head of the army said that the Namgun family cannot be associated with the dirty deeds of black authorities, for which he received a teapot on the head. Hek said that he would find out about such organizations and ordered the soldiers to wait. The head of the family sat with his son at the table and wondered why there was so much food. After all, to save money, they haven't eaten so much for a long time. The manager said that their financial situation had improved, so they could dine in peace. The head of the family said that he knew the situation well, and there was nothing to improve. The manager said that the young master gave them enough money for the family to live decently. Gun-hyuk came to him the day before, and gave him money asking him to improve his food. The manager asked where he got such a lot of money. Hek said that this was payment for his efforts at the inn. The manager thought that no inn could earn that kind of money, but this money would lead the Namgun family to prosperity and did not ask any more questions. He said that thanks to the efforts of the young master, they would spend this winter warm, and thanked them for their hard work. Gung-hyuk left the manager and realized that although he was unfriendly, Hyuk could use the place and pay for his stay. The head of the family did not believe that Hek earned this money at the inn, and he said that their family could not use money from their unknown source. The manager asked, "Does the head of the family want to eat normally?" The head of the family decided that eating well would not harm anyone, and said that he would ask Heck where he got the money. The manager left, and on the way thought that since the young master recovered, the family's energy has been overflowing. A new wind is blowing towards the Namgung family. Gun Heck sat in the black merchant's shop and asked about the dark dominant forces on Earth at that time. The merchant said it was against the rules to disclose information without payment. Gun Heck caused a small pogrom in his shop, and the merchant decided that every rule has exceptions. He said that there are 4 large groups. Chilcon operates in the north. They have over 50 people. They feed themselves by smuggling. Human lives off usury, and they are pure evil. Members of the Tudong faction live next to the brothel. They do dirty things and supply girls. Gun Hyuk thought that he had done a lot of bad things in his past life, but he also protected the right people. And these human traffickers have crossed all borders. They are trash. The main activity of the Taun group is a gambling house. They take money from the rich. Hyuk could not believe that the Namgun family allowed criminals to expand so much. He asked how much income these groups had, and the merchant replied that about 10,000 coins a month. Gun Heck thought that they had settled well and ordered the merchant to find out everything and provide him with new information. He offered the merchant a deal and promised that he would not lose money. The merchant was delighted and promised to serve the Namgong family faithfully. Gun Hyuk went out with the firm intention of making money. There were a lot of people in the gambling house. Everyone was playing for money. Head Tayunteo watched the players. He said that these bags of money were very profitable for them. The interlocutor asked why the head sits here all the time. He used to entrust this to other people. Teo remembered meeting Namgun Hyuk when he was a robber in the chapters before. Now that he remembers his face, he finds it difficult to breathe. He decided to put aside unpleasant thoughts and focus on business. At this time, workers came running to him and said that some crazy person downstairs was saying that he was taking this place for himself. Theo ran to find out what kind of crazy person was encroaching on his place of work. He was going to beat him to a pulp, but he saw Gun Hyuk smiling, and he no longer wanted to fight. Gun Hyuk asked if they could be dating, but Tayo denied it. Heck said that he would be very happy to take this place for himself. One of the bandits rushed at Heck with a knife, but Theo prevented the attack with a blow to the face. He started beating his employee himself. Gun Hyuk said that's enough. He himself will take care of educating people later. He said the transfer of cases could now begin. He left the room and told the soldiers that they had decided everything, and they could come in and take everything. The soldiers came in and a man flew out of the window. This was the head of Evman, Su. Gun Heck told them not to destroy his property, and he asked, "What about the Chilcon group?" The soldier replied that people had gone there and everything should be okay. Gun Hyuk said that then they would all meet at the place he spoke about. There was still one place left, but Gun Hyuk said that he needed to check something before he taught them a lesson. There was a lot of delicious food on the table, but the Thunder Dragon soldier sat quietly and did not eat anything. Gun Hyuk sat at the head of the table, and a beautiful girl poured him a drink. He said that his soldiers were kind of old-fashioned and didn't want to have fun. He thought that his soldiers only looked big and brave, but in reality they were timid and shy. The girl approached Heck and said that his cup was empty and she would pour more. She said her name was Yeonhwa. He grabbed her hand. The kettle fell to the floor and broke. The girl tried to break free, but she couldn't. Heck said that her hands were rough. She was from a peasant family and had worked in the fields until recently. He asked how long she had been working in this establishment, and he replied that it was 2 months. Then Heck asked how old she was, and they answered 20. He said she looked younger. The young woman listened attentively to their conversation, and she looked intently at Yeonhwa, who began to cry. Heck noticed that the girl was afraid and ordered everyone to leave the room. Everyone obediently left. Heck said that now there is no one here and the girl can answer all the questions. He gave her 1,000 coins and told her to pay off her debts or buy herself new clothes. He said that Namgung's family would be able to protect her, and so let her tell everything. Yeonhwa said that she was sold to this place because of her father's debts, because of loans with a huge interest rate. She is now 15 years old and she tried to escape, but was caught. Each time they beat her and broke her bones. She can't even die because her debts will be transferred to her younger children. Gun Hyuk asked, "Are there other girls in the same situation?" She replied that the majority, yes. The soldier could not stand it and slammed his fist on the table. He really didn't like all these dirty deeds. Gun Hyuk said that you shouldn't leave everything as it is. He decided that he would destroy the villains. The sounds of a fight were heard in the large, beautiful house. The man flew down the corridor from the impact. He was very scared. An axe stuck into the door next to him. Gun Heck said that next time the axe will fly to his head, so let him answer only when asked. He asked who was behind his organization, and he warned that if he lies, he will die immediately. The man replied that the Toten group, the head of the army, said that he had found information. Heck read and said that he already knew all this, but he needs information about human trafficking. It is probably kept in the Toten group, and he asked the last question. Where is the Toten group? The soldiers of the Thunder Dragon, led by Gun Hek, walked through the forest. They were full of anger and determination. They were ready to kill the bandits. Hek said that only half could be killed, and the rest could be handed over to the administration to say that it was self-defense. The soldiers agreed to half. The leader of the Todong group, Gu, shouted to his people to hurry up. They needed to get rid of all the evidence before the people from the Namgong family came to them. The messenger shouted that they didn't have time. Namgun's soldiers were already here. Gu asked how many there were, and the messenger replied that there were about 10 people. Gu decided that he needed to fight them, although he was told that it was dangerous to fight such a powerful family. But Gu said that if they kill everyone, they will be able to buy time. The gang is outnumbered by the squad. They need to be killed and then take their business elsewhere. The bandits have a chance to succeed. Gun Hek's squad approached the bandits' lair. It was quiet there. Hek realized that the bandits were planning something. The soldier threw his axe at the gate. He cut through them and began to break them. He entered the yard. There was no one there. A net fell on top of him, and he was captured by the bandits who held this network. But they could not hold him. He walked and dragged 4 bandits behind him. The head of the army said that the guy was too tough for them. At this time, the archers on the roof prepared to shoot at the soldiers. But Chang Wu was already running towards them across the roof. The archer shot an arrow at him. Chang Wu deftly dodged the flying arrow. He ran to the bandit and punched him with all his might. The rest of the bandits attacked all together, and Chang Wu deftly scattered them in different directions. Bandits on the street attacked a small detachment of soldiers and surrounded them. The soldiers entered the fray with great success. They hacked and stabbed enemies left and right. The soldier tore the net and shouted not to continue without him, and he burst into the thick of the fight, causing great damage to the bandits. He wielded the butt of an axe and did it very accurately. Gun Hek watched the fight and saw that his soldiers were doing great. He calculated that they killed about 50 people, and this was very good for the Namgun family. The gang leader decided that it was necessary to use a last resort. He pulled out his sword and charged at one of the Thunder Dragon soldiers. His sword wounded the fighter in the leg, and blood began to flow. The leader was about to deliver the final blow, and it would all be over. But his comrades ran to help the fighter, and the gang leader stopped in indecision. He sharply threw 2 black balls towards the attackers. In flight, they dissipated and turned into black smoke. The Thunder Dragon fighters shouted that they could not see anything, and they needed to hold their breath. Perhaps it was poison. The gang leader appeared from the black fog in front of them. He very quickly stabbed the soldiers several times and jumped to the side. The leader said that in these lands, there is no one faster than him, and they cannot cope with him. Hek looked at the leader's fighting methods and thought that these were the methods of people from the backyard. The head of the Thunder Dragon army was approaching the leader, who challenged Gu to a fight. Gu quickly jumped back and said that he could fight. Just don't let his opponent be surprised when he sees what he's capable of. The head of the army rushed at the enemy, waving his sword. Gang leader Gu moved with extraordinary speed. It was impossible to follow his movements, and he found himself behind the back of the head of the army. And behind the leader himself was Gun Hek, who grabbed him by the head. And with one movement, he threw the scoundrel far to the side. With one bound, the leader jumped to his feet and noted that the Namgun family had no military etiquette. He shouted at the boy who was standing in front of him. How dare he interfere in the battle between the 2 leaders? Gun Hek said that trash who engages in human trafficking cannot talk about etiquette. The leader thought that this guy was the real leader of the squad, and he decided that he would win by throwing an awl, which he mastered perfectly. First he threw another black ball, and Gun Hek was enveloped in thick black smoke, after which the leader threw 2 sharpened awls right into the middle of the smoke screen. He was sure that Gun Hyuk would not be able to avoid the weapon due to the smoke, in which nothing could be seen. And even if he blocks them, he will lose his stable position. Then the gang leader will put an end to this boy. Gun Hek easily caught the awl with one hand, and he immediately sent them back to the enemy. The gang leader, screaming, grabbed his pierced hand and lost his stable position. Gun Hek came out of the cloud of smoke and said that he saw right through his dirty intentions. The gang leader was about to use a shuriken, a sharply sharpened steel star. But Gun Hyuk stepped on his hand. The gang leader tried to free himself, but nothing worked. It was all over. The enemy was defeated. The gang leader was lying on the ground covered in blood. The bandits realized that their eldest was no longer capable of anything and began to give up. A total of 25 people surrendered, and Hek thought that exactly half of the bandits remained alive. A man ran up to Hek, who asked to spare him and promised that he would tell all the information from the secret book of income and expenses. Gun Hyuk forcefully pushed the man away from him. He asked if he spared the poor girls, who also asked him for mercy. The soldiers took pleasure in beating the scoundrel. Hek said he would be merciless too, and the scoundrel suffered a well-deserved punishment. Gun Hek ordered to clean up and go home. The head of the Namgun family was informed that the young master and his men had dealt with the bandit groups. They saved a lot of people. The head didn't believe it and asked to repeat, "Who did the son deal with?" The manager said that Heck had arrested many bandits, and that was good news. Dad asked why the little guy got involved with the bandits. The manager noticed that at a young age, it is normal for energy to overflow, and the young master has such a sense of justice. The head of the family wondered how his son was so different from him. Dad has never been so arrogant and impudent. The manager added that the head of the county highly praised Gun Heck and his people because they saved the women and handed over the bandits to the administration. For this, the county ruler sent high-quality tea to the Namgu family. Dad said he didn't think Heck would be so active after his serious illness. The head of the family asked to invite Heck to him so that everyone could drink tea together, but the manager said that the young master had already gone somewhere. The head of the family said that it was impossible to keep track of this guy, and they would drink tea together with the manager. Gun Hyuk also drank tea and was served by Teo. He congratulated Heck for achieving unity in the area. Heck said it was just cleaning up backyards. Gun Heck gathered 3 former gang leaders and ordered them to listen carefully. He said that their groups had been disbanded and were being taken over by the Ilseong organization. Teo said that this is the first time he has heard this name. Gun Heck replied that he had recently created it and called it that. The bandits could not believe that the largest group was created under the control of the Namgun family. Heck at this time told them about the rules and regulations of the Ilsen organization. Betray and you will die. Steal and you will die. If you trade people, you will die. If you gossip behind your back, you will die. If you fight with yourself, you will die. If you drive drunk, you will die. And if you behave arrogantly, you will die twice. The bandits were very surprised by these rules. So Ah was sitting in a tavern and drinking vodka. The servant reminded him that he was already drunk, and it was time to stop. So Ah, like a brute animal, attacked the servant and began to beat him. The servant asked for forgiveness and asked So Ah to stop, but he didn't listen to him. The visitors were deciding whether to intervene, but felt that it was not worth getting involved with the Namgun family. One of them said that Namgung's power is not eternal if such hooligans grow in it. So Ah heard this remark, and turned to the man with a threatening look. He ran up and attacked the man with a very aggressive look. Suddenly his attack was interrupted by a loud cry that it was time to stop. An unfamiliar old man stood on the threshold and loudly said that the young master must stop everything. He said that soldiers should not intimidate ordinary people, and that was enough outrage for today. So Ah threw the man he was holding by his clothes aside. He sat down on a chair and demanded another drink. The old man said that he had drunk enough and he needed to go home. Or should the old man call a person who will report to the Namgung family what is happening here? So Ah jumped out of his chair and started shouting at the old man. How dare he threaten him? The old man told the servant to go to the Namgun family and tell everything. Let him also ask to send soldiers to accompany the young master. So Ah disappeared before the old man could finish his speech. The old man said that if it weren't for the Namgun family, he would have personally dealt with the scoundrel. At this time, the former heads of the group served Heku at a drinking party. Theo was very worried about how the young master liked the new drink. Gun Hyuk said that everything was fine, and Teo was very happy. He received a bronze rank. In the new organization, there were iron and gold and other ranks. Heck said that he only looks at ability and will assign ranks fairly. The other bandits also wanted to increase their ranks and began to praise their drinks. Gun Hyuk said that he was already drunk, and that was enough for today. He went out onto the balcony to get some fresh air. On the street, he noticed suspicious people in black. They walked around the corner of the building, and the guy felt that a gloomy and cold-blooded energy was emanating from them, which was similar to the one that came from the masked fighter in the mountains. The bandits have already prepared new drinks for the young master, and the young master had already jumped from the balcony down to the ground. With all his might, he ran after the strange people in black. The bandits looked down and could not believe that a person could jump from a height of 15 meters without fractures or injuries. Heck fled and thought that suspicious characters had no place on his territory. He decided that it would be more convenient for him to chase strangers along the rooftops. He wanted to catch them and find out who they were. He reached a dead end and realized that the strangers had disappeared. He sat down and listened, and realized that they were somewhere here, because they sensed his approach. These are not ordinary people, but what do they want here? It was useless to wait, and Heck sobered up from running quickly, and he decided to return and try what the other bandits had in store for him. So Ah was walking along the dark streets when 2 dark figures blocked his way. So Ah thought that people whose faces are covered with robber masks are dangerous, and you need to avoid meeting them. A third man appeared from the alley, and So Ah finally realized that they were waiting for him. He decided to attack the one in front, knock him down, and run away. He swung his fist, aiming for his opponent's head. It all ended badly. and So-ah's unconscious body was carried on the shoulder of one of the fighters. They discussed among themselves that the sons of the Namgun family were not capable of anything. 3 days later, the black merchant was sitting in his shop and gloomily counting something. Finally, he shouted that nothing was adding up and everything was annoying. Because of Gunhek, his calculations became too confusing. Gunhek appeared on the threshold, and the merchant choked on his tea. Gunhek asked how things were going, and the merchant replied that there was a lot of work. Gunhek said that there was still time, and asked what the merchant knew about the suspicious people who had appeared recently. 3 days ago, some unpleasant guys appeared in the direction of the Sky Tower. Gunhek ordered the merchant to find out who they are and where they are now. The merchant said that he did not have enough people to do all the work, and Heck replied that he would send reinforcements to him. The merchant said that he needed 100 people, and Heck replied that he had united all the bandits, so there were enough people. At the house of the brother of the head of the family, Beck, his son Jung, informed his father that So-ah had been missing for the 3rd day. 3 days ago he created a mess in the inn and then disappeared. Peck was very concerned about this. Problems came one after another. He wondered what if So-ah was kidnapped to trap him. He said that he would sort everything out himself, and let Jung shut everyone's mouths, so that there would be no rumors. The door of a small house in the forest shattered into pieces. She was knocked out by an angry Peck. He shouted for the occupant of the house to come out to him immediately. The masked man came out and asked what made his guest so angry. Peck shouted that he wanted to know where his son was. The masked man said that his son was being well taken care of, and there was no need to worry. Pak shouted that they were ruining all plans, but the masked man objected that the faster Pak copes, the faster he will get his son back. He promised that he wouldn't touch a hair on So-ah's head. And if Beck doesn't know where to start, Pak exclaimed, "Year of Unity," and said that he would do everything and there would be no failure. The masked man repeated, "The Year of Unity," and said that the blood flowers are blooming wildly now, so it will be a mesmerizing scene, and left. Gunhek walked through the yard and thought that spring was approaching, but he was very lethargic. Jong-san asked what kind of spring the young master is talking about if they still have plenty of firewood. The young man told the young master the news that So-ah had not been home for the 3rd day. Gunhek said that usually adult men leave home at some point. Jong-san replied that there was no news from So-ah at all. For now, people are only whispering in the corners, but soon they will speak loudly. Heck thought that those suspicious guys appeared 3 days ago, and disappeared at the same time. Gonghen wanted to find these guys, take off their masks and find out everything. The black merchant showed him on a map the path of So-ah to the place where his trail ended. Heck thought that everything was coming together, and there was no need to delay any longer. Based on the information collected, you can reduce the search area to 3 places. He instructed the former bandit leaders to search these places. He told the merchant that he himself would go with the head of the Thunder Dragon army. If there is new information, let him know. So-ah was sitting tied to a post on the 2nd floor of a hut in the forest. He was approached by a masked man, who had been warned that strangers had come to his territory. He said it was time to change places. He gave orders to move carefully without revealing his identity. A messenger brought news that a group of bandits was moving in their direction. The masked man said they were faster than he thought. The masked man said that he would like to leave quietly, but nothing can be done. He went out through a secret passage and ordered his soldiers to kill everyone who came here. Gunhek's squad approached the hut. Teo said that the most common sightings here were strangers. Gunhek said that everyone could leave, and he and the head of the Thunder Dragon army would sort it out themselves. The head of the army said that there was no one else in the area. He said that he would be happy to save young Master Namgun. So-ah. Hyuk replied that they didn't need So-ah at all. The head of the army asked why all this was started, not to save So-ah. Gun-hyuk said that So-ah is a useless person, and he is here to find out who those suspicious guys are. 3 warriors went first to storm the hut. Black figures jumped out of it at high speed, which immediately attacked the soldiers from all sides. The soldiers successfully responded with blows of their swords, but the attackers were very fast and skilled with weapons. Their swords were shrouded in streams of energy. One of the warriors swung a sword blazing with energy, and the head of the army was hardly able to repel this blow, but the sword still touched his hand. He fell to the ground, clutching his wound with his hand. The stranger with the fiery sword was getting closer and closer to him. The head of the army knew that this man was giving off the same feeling as the mountain robbers. It turns out they are all from the same gang? And who are they? The battle in the clearing continued. The soldiers had difficulty coping with the fighters from whom such power came. The head of the army was able to get up and attack the fighter who stood in front of him. The fighter missed the head of the army, dodged his sword and ended up right behind the head of the army. He immediately struck the head of the army in the back with his sword, but the sword could not pierce the man's body. The head of the army turned and said that now his rival had been caught. The fighter jumped back, and the head of the army began to pursue him. His sword pierced right through the fighter. But the fighter caught the hand of the head of the army and raised his sword over his head. The head of the army thought that he was fighting a madman. Gunhek came to the aid of the head of the army, and with one blow threw the fighter far back. He told the head of the army that even if he won, almost dying, this does not mean that everything is over. The rest of the soldiers fought with the fighters and said that even if they died, they would still defeat them. The soldiers rushed to attack the soldiers, but they fell to the ground. Gunhek asked who was going to die here. The head of the army was going to approach Gunhek and ask for forgiveness for fighting poorly, but Hek shouted at him not to move. The figure of a fighter flew out from under the ground, who was about to attack his opponents. He waved his sword in the air, and again waves of energy came from his weapon. Gunhek drew his sword, which was also enveloped in strong energy. He filled his sword, and the streams of his energy met the energy of the enemy. The enemy was surprised. Hek's strong flow of energy broke through the fighter's defense and reached his target. The fighter fell to the ground. Hek realized that his opponent was weaker than he thought. The soldiers were talking about what the young master had. A sword or some other weapon? They didn't notice. Everything happened so quickly. So-ah was surprised to see that the hatch opened, and Gunhyuk appeared in the opening. Immediately the hatch closed again, and So-ah heard Hek's voice that there was no one there and they could leave. So-ah burst into tears and asked to save him and not leave him here. The head of the Thunder Dragon army carried So-ah and asked if he was okay. Gunhek said that the head was doing a useless thing. Chong-woo reported that they killed everyone who was in the hut, and Hek was upset that he had not calculated the strength. But Chang-woo replied that all the fighters committed suicide. The masked man looked at the sky and thought that Gunhyuk had incredible strength. He even understands the affairs of ghosts. Was there anyone in the Namgong family with such destructive power? Pek was informed that So-ah had returned. Pek thought that how could this be? He was supposed to return when the merger was over. But his son So-ah appeared on the doorstep of the house. He was accompanied by the head of the army and Gunhek. So-ah rushed to hug his father and brother in tears. He complained that he was scared and hard. Jong consoled him and said that everything is fine now. Pek was very angry. Gunhyuk asked his uncle what was wrong with his face. His son has returned, we must rejoice. Pek asked Hek if he saved his son. Hek smiled shyly and replied that it happened by chance. Pek promised not to forget this and to pay back with dignity. Hek said he wouldn't turn down the award, after which he left. Pek looked after him and thought how the boy was ruining everything. So-ah said that he was very grateful to Hyuk and offered to prepare a treat for him to repay the debt. Pek yelled at his son that thanks to him his father had become a laughing stock and he didn't understand what they had lost. If So-ah had died, then my father would not have to endure such shame. After which he told his son that he did not want to see him anymore. So-ah left the room with a cry of grievance. Jong asked his father, shouldn't So-ah know about this matter? He continued that if So-ah knew everything, he would have behaved differently. The father replied that this knowledge was beyond So-ah's ability, and he ordered his son to put his brother under surveillance so that he would not do anything wrong. Puck thought that everything had changed, but they would still carry out their grand plan as before. Jung-san told Hyuk that there was news. At a meeting of elders, it was decided that before he could finish, a piece of food hit him in the cheek. Hek yelled that the taste of 100-year-old ginseng was disgusting. Jung-san said that there is no such thing as a 100-year-old. It is a 50-year-old. Hek screamed even more that there was no taste or medicinal effect. Jong-san said that he will tell the doctor everything, and he got ready to leave. Hek asked what the guy wanted to tell him. Jung-san replied that the merger was moved to an earlier date. Hek asked what is a merger. They've never heard of him. Jung-san said that the young master is gaining strength every day, but his intelligence is decreasing. Gun-hyuk broke the table out of anger and yelled that he would throw the impudent Jung-san out of the group for bullying the boss. The young man said that the merger is an event that the Namgung family holds every 10 years. All entrepreneurs in the family gather at the parental home and present the results of their work, as well as make new connections and make plans for the future. That's why it's called a merger. Hek asked why it was moved. You need to be well prepared. Chung-san replied that there have been assassinations, attacks, tragedies continue to happen, and entrepreneurs are very nervous about this. Therefore, through the merger, they will be able to overcome the crisis and make plans to solve the problems. Hek thought about it. Hyung-san said that Gun-hyuk should also take part in the merger. You need to choose clothes, prepare everything. Gun-hyuk said that he was not interested in this, and let the guy do everything himself, and fell on the bed to rest after eating. He thought that an event where all entrepreneurs would gather was a good chance. Jung-san glared at his young master. At night, Pek walked through his house very angry. He went into his office and a masked man said that he had returned late. Pek was not expecting guests. The masked man said that if Pek had completed the job to the end, it would have been impossible to get here. Pek said that if So-ah was kidnapped, then the masked man should have made sure that he was not found. The masked man said that nothing has changed. Their plan has not been revealed. No one knows about its existence. The Namgung family suspects nothing. Pak said the situation has now become more complicated. The Namgung family will be more careful. The masked man said that it was Nam Gun Hyuk who complicated the situation. He was a fragile guy who could die at any minute, with a body that broke from any movement. This guy suddenly ruined the plans that took 10 years to make in less than 6 months. This growth is difficult to explain. The masked man said that he would catch Nam Gun Hyuk and let Baek carry out his part of the plan. The head of the Thunder Dragon army sat by the river and threw stones into the water. He thought that for the first time he felt helpless. His comrades came up and asked what he was thinking about, and he replied that they could not understand it. He said that their first priority was to protect the young master. Therefore, they cannot fall face down in the dirt, and he feels that his strength is not enough. Some special training is needed. Gunhek gathered his soldiers who wanted special training. He asked why they needed this. Did they feel like they had hit a wall and couldn't overcome it? The head of the army said that they wanted to stand with the young master so that his hands would not be tied because of them. Hek said there is one way to learn. This is a real fight with an opponent who is stronger and more experienced. He said that his brother Gong Ren is a very good opponent for his soldiers. He asked his brother to have a duel with the head of the army. The brother stared at Hek silently, unable to understand what he had just heard. The head of the army also did not appreciate the prospect of a fight with the eldest heir of the family. Hek threw a bamboo stick to the head of the army and said that if he wins, he will do for him whatever he wants. The brother asked if this was the younger brother's request, and he said that he was asking very much. Hek told the rules. If the head of the army forces Gong Ren to move even one step, victory is his. The soldiers whispered that the head of the army could do this, and the head of the army himself was also confident that he could do it. Both men prepared to fight. The head of the army jumped high and attacked Gong Ren. He stood with his hands behind his back. The head of the army used a 10-fold thunder dragon strike. Gong Ren continued to stand and did not remove his hands from behind his back. A stick flew into the sky, and she shot down the head of the army like a bird on takeoff. Gong Ren told his brother that he was waiting for the promised food for the victory. Then he took him by the collar and dragged him with him. Friends of the head of the army gathered to drag him to a safe place while he lay unconscious. The brothers dined together, and the eldest tenderly offered the best pieces to the younger one. Gun Hyuk thought this guy was very strange. He cares so much about his brother, although the experience of his previous life told him that brothers always want to kill each other. He yelled at Gong Ren to eat himself, but he has hands. Gong Ren looked at his brother and thanked him. Hek didn't understand why he was being thanked. Gong Ren said that he was grateful that his brother had become much healthier and stronger. He added. Gun Hyuk even turned blue from such words. Can men talk like that? He felt that this family was making him feel more and more hardships, and it was annoying him. The head of the army came to his senses, and his comrades said that he had passed out from one blow. Gun Hek appeared before them and said that the leader of the army was lucky that he had been unconscious all this time. He said that the head of the army lost because he was weak. Hek took the stick and told the leader of the army to be careful and try to block the blow. They stood opposite each other. Gun Hyuk suddenly disappeared from his place, and he was already threatening his opponent with his stick. Next to him, he said that he was not fast, but simply moved in a direction that was inconvenient for his opponent. If you hit the blind spot even slowly, it will have the effect of a lightning strike. Gun Hek said that the head of the army should devote more time to theory and then to practice. Gun Hek said that the head of the army does not have outstanding abilities. If he remembers all his experiences, his body itself will react in the right direction. After training, all the soldiers lay on the ground and moaned. Did Gun Hek think that the stick broke because it was bad, or did his soldiers have stone heads? Elder Peak released a carrier pigeon and watched its flight. He told Jong to go to the training arena. He knew that a big event was coming. He needed to prepare. Gun Hyuk sat on the roof and remembered how he fished with the Sword King from the Namgun family. The Sword King told Dak Bae that he was sorry that Dak Bae was so lonely. Dak Bae countered that family is a shackle and can become a weak point. But the Sword King still said that it was a pity that no one could support Dak Bae, as it happens in families. The Sword King continued that if Dak Bae is so callous, he might break and no one will help him get up. Gun Hyuk thought that all this was nonsense and laughed at them, but he couldn't get his loving father and brother out of his head. Loyal soldiers who loved him. He jumped to his feet and started yelling that the Namgung family would drive him crazy. Because of such thoughts, he lost his appetite. The soldiers of the Thunder Dragon army were training hard. Gun Hek told the head of the army that simply waving a sword was absurd. It's hard on his arms and legs. The head of the army asked if Hek had come to teach them. Gun Hyuk answered gloomily that he did. The soldiers said they would study hard. Hek said they should learn to work alone. He said that now they will learn to work not only in a team, but also speaking alone against a team of masters. To begin with, 3 against 1 is a situation when you are surrounded by opponents on all sides. Heck ordered the head of the army to concentrate. He screamed and was enveloped in a flame of energy. The head of the army prepared for battle. Heck shouted that what he was about to show was called the night cry of a dragon. A menacing blue light spread over the houses of the Namgun estate. In the morning, Young-san asked Hyuk what the Thunder Dragon army had heard. Had they really been training all night? Heck replied that his soldiers were enthusiastic. The soldiers' training continued. They tried to summon their currents of power by slashing at targets with swords and axes. It was very difficult for them. They did not achieve success and sat down on the ground to rest. Gun Heck said that they are all pitiful individuals. He told them that they need to breathe calmly and follow the breath. Here he stopped, thought, and said that a good idea had come to his mind. The soldiers were again shackled with heavy cannonballs. Gun Heck led them to the riverbank and said that energy flows were clearly visible in the water. In addition, when a person faces danger to life, the effect is best. He boasted that he came up with it himself. All the soldiers' arguments that it was still cold and someone might drown did not work, and the guy kicked the head of the army into the water with a kick in the ass. The rest of the soldiers, without waiting for a kick, jumped into the water. They stood gloomily in the water, and Gun Heck shouted at them not to curl up. Heck began to hit the water with a stick and shouted so that the soldiers would feel the flow of energy and push him out. Chong-san watched this nightmare and thought that the young master had completely gone crazy and would drown the entire army. And suddenly, numerous bright streams of energy broke through the water. The soldiers lay exhausted on the riverbank. Gun Hyuk said that they passed the test. A horse-drawn carriage was driving through the forest. The first guest arrived at the Namgung estate. Peck checked his sword. His son came to him and said that all preparations were completed. He asked if it was worth changing the places of their people and soldiers in the banquet hall. But Pak said that we must avoid suspicion and act naturally. He also told So-ah to have people assigned to him and to stay away from the banquet hall. Father and son left the room. The masked man was reading the letter. The messenger said that all preparations have been completed and we need to move out right now. The masked man examined his army. Everything was ready. Many people gathered in the banquet hall of the Namgong family, but Gong Hyuk remembered how the Sword King told him that at that time, the 5 influential families in the Day Emperor sent their representatives to the Namgong family. Now the family is very weak. The head of the family entered the hall. Heck thought that Dad was very charismatic. The head of the family greeted everyone present. He offered to drink to the future, but Namgun Baek refused to drink. He broke his chair and said that he had nothing to sit on, and he wants to make a speech. Bok shouted that his Namgung family used to be very powerful, but now ranks last among the 5 families and is subject to threats, and all because of the incompetence of the head of the family. He said that if he were the head, he would not allow such a shame, and he encouraged those who agreed with him to stand up. Some people stood up and agreed with Pak. They said that the head of the family needs to be changed. Pak asked his brother, will he leave on his own or will he be removed by force? The faithful gathered near the head of the family and drew their weapons. The army obeyed Peak and surrounded the head of the family with loyal people. The faithful part of the army gathered to resist, but they began to kill. The soldiers fought each other. Peck also took his sword out of its sheath and turned to the head of the family. He said that only one of them would survive. Jung-san was terrified and screamed loudly, and Gun Hyuk watched and thought that finally something interesting had happened. The Thunder Dragon soldiers sat in the courtyard of the estate. Gun Hyuk ordered them to wait for him. Screams, the sound of a struggle and an order to kill everyone who resisted were heard in the courtyard. The head of the army looked at what was happening and was surprised. In the courtyard, there was a massive fight between some soldiers and others. The Thunder Dragon soldiers remembered that their master had said that something like this would happen, so he told them to wait. The head of the army said that the enemies of the Namgun family had begun their rebellion. He reminded the soldiers that their main goal was the young master's well-being. They decided to enter the banquet hall through the back door and find the young master. Soldiers with weapons in their hands blocked their way. Their old acquaintance Henmu told them not to take a single step forward. The head of the army asked if they were really in league with the traitors, to which Henmu said that this is not treason, but a revolution, and drew his sword. The soldiers of the Thunder Dragon army were indignant and replied that such revolutions were worthless. The head of the army said that he does not want to shed blood among family members, even if they have fallen to the bottom. But now this is a matter of life and death, and he is giving his comrades a chance to abandon their criminal plans. Henmu laughed and asked if the head of the army really thinks that he is considered a member of the family. They despise cockroaches like the Thunder Dragon army. After these words, the head of the army realized that his hands were free, and he could finish off the rebels without any hesitation. He drew his sword and rushed to attack Henmu. Their swords crossed and they looked at each other with hatred. In the corridor, two soldiers were fighting each other. The blow sent one flying to the side and bumped into a man with his back. He turned around and recognized Elder Beck, who swung his sword without a word. And the soldier fell to the floor screaming. Why? Peck held a bloody blade in his hands and said that he was only doing his duty. And the soldier may think that this is unfair. Peck heard his name being called loudly and turned around to see who was calling him. The head of the family ran towards him with a sword in his hands. He was furious and ready to fight. Both enemies were enveloped in the radiance of their energy. They moved at terrible speed. Nam Gunbek was determined to finish off his brother as quickly as possible. The head of the Namgun family repelled his blows with his sword, but could only defend himself. Their swords clashed with a loud sound, sparks flying from their blades. In the courtyard, the Thunder Dragon soldiers were fighting with the rebels. The soldiers were shrouded in a glow of pure energy. The enemies fell under their blows. Hyunmu thought in horror, how could this be? Almost all of Henmu's warriors were killed, and the soldiers of the Thunder Army walked among the fallen enemies. Henmu stood in front of the head of the Thunder Dragon Army and said that who would have thought that these bastards were so strong. And Chanwoo's friend said that he didn't even sweat during the fight, so everything went so easily. The leader of the army waved his sword, and blood flowed from the throat of the traitor Henmu. He fell to the ground, and the head of the army said that while they were all resting, he and his soldiers were training, risking their lives. Here is the result. He announced to his soldiers that this was no time to rejoice. They were going inside to find the young master. The chief elder of the Namgun family also fought with the rebel soldiers. As it turned out, he was excellent with a sword, and the soldiers had a very bad time. The elder shouted in anger that the traitors would answer for everything. He realized how good it was that he spent time training. One of the rebels attacked the elder from behind, but a wooden stick flew into his face and knocked him to the ground. Everyone was very surprised by this sudden help. Gun Heck, who threw the stick, said that old people fight so funny. It's a shame to watch this. The rebels shouted that if they captured Gun Heck, their victory would be sealed. And they all attacked the guy together. Heck stood calmly and waited for their attack. One soldier lunged with his sword, but Gun Heck deftly dodged it with a stick in his hand. And then I hit the attacking rebel on the head with a stick. He just gasped. Gun Heck simultaneously prepared to repel the attack of several soldiers. One screaming the bastard tried to reach Gun Heck with a halberd. Heck blocked the halberd from behind with his stick, and then the soldier received a terrible blow to the face with the same stick. The soldiers fell like bowling pins from Gun Heck's crushing blows. Many were already lying motionless and were unlikely to ever be able to get up. Gun Heck continued the battle against superior enemy forces. His formidable weapon struck the rebels to death. Gun Heck's stick was already covered in the blood of his enemies. He stood and asked with a laugh, "Is this really all that traitors are capable of? They are very weak for him." The best warriors froze in a daze. The young master had such strength that no one could cope with him. Their chief ordered to kill the boy and not leave him alive. Gun Hyuk said that it was easier said than done and jumped high. He attacked the scoundrel who gave this order from above. The soldiers watched as Gun Heck soared in the air. His energy released itself and enveloped him in a blue glow. He jumped to the ground and the soldiers backed away in fear. Gun Heck's energy burst out and there was an explosion. Huge blue circles of power spread throughout the battle area. The soldiers covered themselves with their hands and shouted that this was impossible for a human to do. However, Gun Hyuk himself thought that he alone would not be strong enough and would not be able to withstand everyone. He looked at the stick with which he fought and mentally prayed that it would last until help arrived. And he inflicted a powerful gift on the soldier, who stood next to him and wanted to wound him. The soldier flew high from such a blow. Gun Heck was confident that the Thunder Dragon army would deal with everyone, but it would be difficult for them to fight against an entire army. Suddenly a strong alien energy flew at him, the flow of which the guy was able to dodge. Streams of evil energy attacked him from all sides. Gun Heck dodged and parried blows with incredible speed. A huge one-eyed fighter emerged from the smoke that enveloped the room. Gun Heck realized that this was the leader of the attackers. The leader walked and thought that the boy was half his size, but they say that he defeated the army and can escape the sword. How did the young master get to this level? Now he understands the reason why Beck asked to destroy Gun Hyuk. He told Heck that if he surrendered, he would live. He will treat him with respect because he used to serve the Namgong family. Heck said he was grateful to the fighter for freeing him from a heavy burden he had been thinking about for a long time. Heck threw away the useless stick and grabbed the sword of one dead soldier, and he shouted that he hated traitors. The fighter also drew his sword and said that, "Let the young master not be offended now." He himself made his choice. Gun Heck noted that his opponent was using a technique, a sword cutting through the skies. This sword art originates from ancient techniques. He thought that it was good that when he was in Deok Bey's body, he trained with the Sword King. and was good at seeing other people's tricks. The fighter was indignant that the boy was standing in front of him, but was not shaking, but on the contrary, was very calm. In response, Gun-hyuk took a fighting stance. They collided and the fighter suddenly flew back. He wondered in surprise whether their powers were really so different, and Gun-hyuk, in turn, thought that it wasn't strength. It was all about the difference in techniques. The fighter thought that the opponent's technique was too fast, and it was not the 9 soul sword technique, and it was too strong, so it was not 13 lightning thunder. His face was distorted with anger. Did this boy really invent a new technique at the age of 20? The fighter clenched his sword and prepared to attack again. Gun-hyuk came close to him and asked if the enemy was afraid of his new technique. But he just mixed many techniques, and this is the result. The enemy growled with anger and attacked Gun-hyuk, but he quickly repelled his attack. Then Gun-hyuk swung his sword, and he attacked the enemy so that he barely had time to dodge. Out of anger, he promised that he would cut off the damned boy's hands. But this is unlikely, because Gun-hyuk moved and attacked so quickly that the fighter seemed to be fighting 3 opponents at the same time. Finally, Gun-hyuk broke through the enemy's defenses and delivered the final blow. He thought that he had lost the fight to a boy who did not even use his sword to its full potential. Gun-hyuk said that compared to the Sword King, his opponent was just a pitiful amateur. The death of the head caused panic among the traitor soldiers. Immediately, the news that the young master had knocked down the army leader, who was the strongest and best in the Namgong family, reached all the soldiers. The soldiers who remained loyal to the head of the Namgong family heard this news, and they were very happy that the leader of the army was dead. This gave them hope of victory. The rebel soldiers were very depressed and did not know what to do now. They were sure that as soon as they caught the young scoundrel, everything would change for the better for them. A huge crowd attacked the lonely Gun-hyuk. Gun-hyuk said that they can attack as much as they want. He is ready to fight everyone. But then the rebel looked behind Gun-hyuk and became despondent. Reinforcements were coming to the young master. The soldier of the Thunder Army was in such a hurry to rush into the battle that smoke came out of his nose. The rebel commander tried to say that it was just one man coming to the rescue, but he didn't have time to finish his sentence when Chang Wu attacked him from above, which was also shrouded in a glow of strong energy. The fate of the rebel commander was sad. Chang Wu's sword cut him, and Chang Wu went to his young master. The soldiers of the Thunder Dragon Army asked if everything was okay with the young master. He replied that they appeared as the main characters from a manhwa, and now everything is fine, and he gave the order to get rid of all rebels and traitors. The soldiers happily followed the order. The rebels fled like cockroaches from the blows of the Thunder Dragon soldiers. The head of the family was fighting his battle with Peck, but they both heard the noise of the battle and half wondered, what is happening there? They heard a cry that the leader of the army had been killed, and Beck thought that Nam Gun-hyuk should have been in his place. And Pak was counting on the leader of the army most of all. The head of the family said that the course of the battle had changed, and his brother should surrender. If the emperor intervenes, then the rebels will have no chance of victory. Paek laughed and said that his brother was waiting in vain for the emperor, and the leader of the army was not Beck's only weapon. He told his brother to look into the yard, and the head of the family saw with horror that the emperor is dead, and his entire squad was killed. Someone's footsteps were heard, and Peck addressed the newcomer that he had arrived late. The man said, pointing to the bodies of the emperor and his servants, that they resisted longer than they would have liked. The masked man said that he still kept his promise and came with an army. Each of the troops is a master with unusual energy. But who are they? The head of the family could not understand. Peck told his brother that he still had cards up his sleeve. The masked man said that those who are loyal to the Namgung family, martial artists, if they want to stay alive, they must surrender. The head of the family shouted to Peck that he was crazy. The thirst for power clouded his eyes. How could he bring outside help? He will not forgive his brother for such a serious crime. Beck said that the position of the head of the family is bad, and there is no need to throw words around. The head of the family prepared for a difficult battle. He attacked the soldiers with his sword and tried to break through to the traitor. The soldiers scattered from his blows, but there were a lot of them. Nam Gun Beck came up from behind and was about to hit his brother in the back. Suddenly a sword flew towards him from behind into clouds of energy, which Peck had to fight off. The sword stuck into the ground. Bok saw Gun-hyuk standing in front of him, who happily greeted his uncle. Heck asked his uncle why he was attacking from behind. Is he really his father's brother, or adopted? Peck shouted that to achieve a goal, the method or means is not important. Heck replied that he also adheres to this position. But his uncle tried to harm his family, and he will not forgive him for this. But he will punish the son of a bitch. The uncle said that the boy should choose his expressions when speaking to his elders. Heck said the son of a bitch will die today. Peck gave the command to the soldiers to kill the boy. The soldiers rushed to attack, but began to fall under the blows of arrows that it was unclear who fired. Gun Hek also couldn't understand where the archers came from. Peck looked up and saw that all the roofs were full of people. The archers pointed their bows menacingly at the rebels. It seemed that an army of 100,000 had come to the estate. Are they mercenaries or soldiers? Here are the flags of the 10 largest factions. The man at the head of the army shouted that they had heard that there was a crisis in the Namgun family, and they had come to the aid of the head of the family. Peck's jaw dropped at this statement. Gun Hek remembered the receipts he took from the heads of the fortresses. That's where they came in handy. The masked man told Peck that too much help had arrived. They didn't expect the 10 factions to interfere in this matter. The head of the Namgun family thanked the owners of the fortresses for their help. The masked man said that the situation was not good, and Peck said that he could leave. But Peck had nowhere to go. He will stay. But the masked man said that his servants could buy them time. In chaotic combat, archers cannot use bows, so there is a chance. The head of the Thunder Dragon army shouted that they would now defeat the traitors. Baek Jung's son ran to help his father. Gong Ren blocked his way. He was waiting for his cousin and was determined. Gong Ren took a fighting stance and was enveloped in a shroud of energy. Zhang rushed at his brother because he was the tiger sword and wanted to prove that he was stronger than the dragon sword. Gong Ren fought the battle with concentration. The Black Army prepared for battle. A masked man and Peck were securely hidden in the middle of the army. The army of the Thunder Dragon rushed into battle with the intention of sweeping away everyone. They beat the Black Warriors and they could not stop the soldiers. The head of the elders also fought alongside the soldiers. The hands of the masked man were enveloped in the yellow energy of his strength, and he ran to attack the head of the Namgun family. He understood that if he killed the head of the family, he would turn the tide of the battle. The head of the family waved his sword, but his opponent was able to dodge. He attacked the head of the family from above, and the blow hit his head. The head of the family parried the blow of the sword, and thought that some monster had attacked him. Peck insidiously hit his brother in the back with a sword, but the head of the family felt him behind him and dodged to the side. The sword passed by. Peck said his brother's abilities have improved. He hid his energy all the time and unexpectedly showed himself. Now the head of the family was fighting 2 formidable opponents. A masked man with burning hands attacked him from behind. But the attack of the masked man was suddenly interrupted, and he was thrown to the side by a strong blow. Gun Hek attacked the enemy in the air. He landed and said that attacking 2 against 1 was too much. The masked man said that he really wanted to fight Hek. Gun Hyuk asked the masked man where they came from. The one who used the bloody claw art was also wearing a mask. Only idiots wear such village masks. The masked man was surprised that Hek knew about the art of the bloody claw. This technique is not so easy to recognize. He asked Hyuk who he really was, and Hyuk replied that he was the second son of the Namgun family. His opponent said it was nonsense. A child cannot recognize such a technique. He said that he would kill Hek and check what kind of mask he was wearing. Hek advised him to get down to business and not talk. He shouted to his father that he would deal with this guy in a mask and let Dad deal with the traitor. Dad was worried whether his son could cope with such a strong fighter. Hek said everything would be okay. The head of the family told his brother that he would not spare him and prepared for battle. Gun Hek at this time reflected multiple blows from the enemy and successfully dodged. Then his opponent wove a fireball from his energy, and he threw it at Gun Hek. An energy network of power hung over the guy. Gun Hek knelt to pierce this network with strong blows. The masked man did not believe that the boy destroyed the blood network so easily. How is this possible? Clawed hands made of energy reached out to Gun Hek. Gun Hek jumped out of the ring of evil power in one leap. He understood that his opponent knew this technique better than the one he fought with the mountain bandits. The masked man covered the distance between him and Hek in one bound and landed next to him. He extended his clawed hand and shouted, "Die!" Hek responded by shouting that he was not going to die. Terrible arrows of the enemy's power. We met with one bright arrow of Gun Hek's power. When the smoke cleared, Hek emerged unharmed. He told the masked man that he had chosen the wrong opponent. The masked man thought that Hek had even destroyed the spirit. Will he be able to destroy the blood magic created by a top-ranked martial artist? Hyuk thought that it was he who created the destruction when he fought with blood magic, while still in Doc Bay's body. His face changed. He remembered that spirits and blood magic were purified using the opposite technique. His only concern was that Gun Hek's body was not strong enough, but if he moved properly, he could destroy the blood magic. He said that his opponent had attacked the wrong person and swung his sword. His opponent jumped aside and shouted that Hek could not bridge the difference between them. He only needed to catch Hek once, and he would be able to tear him to pieces. Huge arrows of force rushed towards the guy. He was thrown back by a terrible force. His opponent extended a paw with claws and shouted that the boy could only dodge and yell. The masked man charged at Hek again. He was irritated by the fact that despite the difference in agility, endurance, and speed, he could not destroy the boy. Hek realized that he was in danger and decided to use the last method. It caused an influx of energy, and he began to open the middle flow, which contains innate energy. His body began to change. His clothes became too small for him and were torn. His opponent stopped and could not understand what Hek was doing. Hek took the sword. He became completely unrecognizable. The masked man felt fear. He shot arrows of power at Hek again, but Hek scattered them with his sword. He created a shield from his power, which enveloped him entirely, and he launched all his strength into his opponent, who could not stay on his feet and flew into the distance. Hek approached the enemy to find out who he was. The masked man couldn't believe this happened to him. He lay there and could not get up. He said Hek was disturbing the man. Hek did not understand what kind of person his enemy was talking about. His enemy repeated that the man had not come for Gun Hek. Hek no longer listened to him, but simply finished him off. He regretted that because of this freak, he had spent all the energy that he had worked so hard to obtain. Now he is exhausted. He felt sorry that he was sitting in such a weak body. Hek was wounded and lost to the head of the family, but he did not want to give up, but decided to reunite with the army and give battle. He saw a masked man who was already completely lifeless and was amazed how Gun Hyuk could defeat him. Such a plan was ruined because of one scoundrel. The scoundrel was sleeping peacefully at that time. Then his uncle noticed him, who decided that he had a chance. But Dad will always come to his son's aid, and the head of the family swooped down on the traitor like a kite. He cut off his brother's hand, which dared to swing at his son. Gun Hek woke up from screams and did not understand anything. His uncle was lying in front of him, and Dad asked if his beloved boy was hurt. Dad said that thanks to Hek they were able to avoid big trouble. He hugged his son and led him into the house. The head of the family announced to the rebels that Namgun Bayek had been defeated, and they could only surrender. The rebellion was suppressed. Baekjong's son was also among the rebels. The traitorous elders asked for forgiveness. The head of the Thunder Dragon army cried at the news that the young master was alive. The masked man's servants fled or committed suicide. Gong Hek met Gong Ren's brother and said that he was hiding somewhere from cowardice. Chang Wu countered that the eldest master fought with the tiger sword. Gun Hek yelled at his brother. Why was he silent about his participation in the battle? But Gong Ren simply hugged his brother tightly. Gun Hyuk could not get used to such tenderness. Gong Ren said that his brother was great and he was proud of him. Hek tried to break free from his brother's embrace. Hyung-san brought food and saw Hyuk under a pile of blankets. He had been sleeping for 3 days. He decided to check if the young master had died. Gun Hyuk jumped up screaming, "How dare Young-san attack someone who is sleeping?" Young-san yelled that he was just checking to see if the guy was alive. He was worried about him. Hek wrapped himself in a blanket and said that he had spent a lot of energy. The trial of the rebels was underway in the courtroom. The servant told the head of the family that the verdict had been passed. The head of the family ordered those family members who joined the rebels to be expelled, and the rest of the hired servants to be sent to hard labor. Namgun Bayek was in prison. He now had one arm missing. The head of the family came to him. He shouted that because of the vile desire of power, many family members died. Puck shouted that his only regret was that his plan had failed. The head of the family asked, "Who are those people in black?" But Peck said he wouldn't tell him that. Gong Heka only had 2 pills left, which he immediately swallowed, but the effect was weak. He felt unwell and sat under the covers. He decided that he needed to prepare his own medicine. This thought made him feel better. The Council of Elders discussed that they would always support the current head of the family. They highly appreciated Gun Hyuk's abilities, and Dad was very pleased. At this time, Hek himself came to the Council of Elders in a blanket with a sad face. He told Dad that he wanted to go on a trip. Young-san met Hyuk in the courtyard and asked how it went. Hek said he received permission. He told Young-san that he would go to Hebei. There you can find a sacred scroll, and then Hek will be able to carry out his plans. After this, Hek went to his uncle's dungeon, who still wanted to kill his nephew, but he couldn't reach it. Hek asked who were these men in black. The uncle flatly refused to answer. Hek replied that he could save Peck's sons, but if he is silent, then there is no one to save. The uncle immediately changed his mind and said that these people themselves came to him and offered strength. That's how it all started. And the masked guy summoned the shadows. Gun Hyuk said that Beck himself was used, and it's all very stupid. Puck asked if Hek would save his sons, and the guy replied that his children would be fine. He will save them. Finally, the day of departure arrived. Gun Hyuk was in a great mood. His brother Gong Ren greeted him on the threshold. The joyful father said that the brothers would go together. Gun Hek angrily refused and shouted that the journey was a reward for his heroism. Dad said that Ren also fought heroically. He brought help and deserves a reward too. Either Hek goes with his brother, or he doesn't go at all. Hek immediately made the right decision. She and her brother stood hugging each other. The ship went out into the open sea and Gun Hek shouted at the top of his lungs, "Now I am free."